palatable because it's kind of poor weather outside, not nice like it was yesterday. So let's go right on to our agenda. Our first item is Commissioner Tufano is going to explain his vision for a financial model for the town. Mr. Tufano.
Oh, thank you. Let me get this close enough so we can hear. First of all, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to expose these ideas to you. There's been a transformation taking place throughout the world in business and government and in education and many other vertical markets, and it's called Agile Transformation. And the purpose of this presentation is not to ask the town to go in any particular direction or another. It is merely just to expose information and to give you an understanding of what's happening throughout the world and how we may be able to use that internally here in our government. Before we go into it, there is the old method of doing it is what was called waterfall. And that is where you take a major document or some kind of strategic plan, and you drive it down the organization to the bottom, to the teams. Well, the transformation that's taken place is turning everything upside down. In other words, the teams drive the entire organization from the bottom up. And so the concept is that everything is built on the smallest possible particle within the organization, and that is the task. So what I'm going to do, if I can share my screen, let's see if that'll happen. And start the slideshow here. Okay. One of the associative accounting systems that go along with this transformation is something called cost accounting. We are currently in what's called a financial accounting mode here in the town of Matthews. And it's very important to understand that these two accounting systems are not in competition with each other. They are complementary to each other. In a financial accounting system, this is where we adapt the generally accepted accounting principles, and it creates all of the external documents that external auditors or the town or whatever needs to have in order to show your viability as that you're financially stable. However, with cost accounting, it doesn't follow any general acceptable accounting principles, but it's just used totally for your internal consumption. So in other words, each individual action has a particular value to it, and that gets fed into the system. So how can they work together? Well, the two accounting systems are not mutually exclusive, but they work together. And what happens is that you use your financial model for the outside world and your cost accounting model for increasing efficiency internally. Right now, and typically in most all businesses that are working in what's called the waterfall model, is that we have what called silos of data. And I don't know how prevalent that is here, but I would imagine it doesn't differ too much from other organizations that initially are coming into the transformation process. So the way to overcome that is to have all of these different organizations feed their activities into a centralized database, and for those activities to be aggregated. Let's talk about the types of cost accounting. Well, first of all, I'm not going to read each of these, but the standard one is typically, based on labor and production and standard cost. And the standard cost, which we'll get into in a moment, is just something that's been assigned a cost value. It doesn't necessarily be the actual cost value, but it's just an assigned cost value. Then there's the activity-based, and that's the one that we work with as each activity is completed, it has a value to it. It has a dollar value to it, and those, we'll get into that in a moment. Then there's the lean and the marginal. The lean is based on the process. There's actually a whole school of business management called lean management that's based almost entirely on the process. Where marginal is when we have a particular cost and we the difference between the actual standard cost that we applied to that particular work piece or to that particular product is different from the actual value that was at that point in time. For instance, a classical example is if you had a standard cost applied to a particular, like a ton of asphalt or something of that nature. But it turns out that when you're actually in the process of performing the task, that the actual ton of asphalt is costing more than it did when you applied the standard cost to it. So that's marginal. We're going to base our concentration is going to be based on the activity, because the activity is what it coincides. The accounting system of activity counting coincides with what's called the Agile Transformation, and we're going to get into that in a moment. So these are the types of costs. Fixed is these are things like our mortgage payments, things that we don't have any adjustment over. The variable cost, we just kind of brushed on that for a moment. That's costs that are subject to variations in inflation. The operating costs, those are the things that are typically fixed, and it's just you know, your electricity, your you know, cost of copying machines or whatever the case may be. And direct costs are the same, where these are more tied to labor costs. And indirect costs are things, I'm sorry, when I misspoke. Indirect costs are things like electricity or energy that are needed to produce whatever you're doing, but are not, you can't put your arms around it and give an actual dollar value until perhaps even weeks or months later. So what is this? It all begins with what's called the activity. And in the transformation process, it's called a subtask. And subtasks come together to form a task. This is the basic building block. The tasks then come together to form an increment, what's called an increment of work. An increment of work comes together to form a product. Products come together to form a project. Projects come together to meet a strategic objective, and the strategic objectives come together to meet a mission goal. So, but everything is based on the subtask. In other words, all costing all the way up to the mission goal is based on the subtask. And so consequently, there is no costing as you go along up this tree. It's all been taken care of down at the very lowest level. So in order to accomplish this, in order to get an aggregate of all the subtasks at any point in time, and this is, by the way, real-time analysis. So you would feed the data into the system, and there's numerous ways to do that and off-the-shelf software to do that real time as each task is being completed. And here's the beautiful part about it is the data entry is by the actual frontline worker that's doing the task. So there's nothing, no administrative overhead. So here's how they work together. So we start with the cost accounting system, which starts with the subtask, and we go all the way up to the mission goal. And then that cost, the output of that cost accounting system gets fed into the financial accounting system. And the way that happens is that, remember how the tree was all the way through the project and all the way up to the mission? Well, each project has a project ID, and those project IDs are mapped to your general ledger accounts. So the ultimate goal is that the field operating group actually inputs their data directly into the system, and it automatically flows up into the financial accounting system, which is where we are today. And of course, we generate our financial reports. So before I go on to the next part of this, are there any questions at this point? Very good. All right. So let's talk about, let me go into full screen here just a moment. Okay. So looking at it from what's called the Agile Transformation. And by the way, just to give you some trivia here, you almost cannot name an organization or a company in the world right now that isn't or hasn't gone through the Agile Transformation process. Right here in the town of Charlotte, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, TIAA, Duke Energy, all of them have either completed or are in the process of going through the Agile Transformation project. Duke Energy is probably the one that's the most furthest along, all the way down to their linemen. They actually have portable systems where the linemen, when they complete a task, they immediately input the information into the system and it flows right up to management. So how does this work? Well, the product owner, which in this case would be the department director, would generate a series of tasks. And in Agile world, that's called a backlog. Then what happens is that product owner sorts those tasks and puts the highest priorities at the top. Then whatever team is assigned to that to do those tasks actually takes those and starts performing them. Inside the task envelope is what the task normally would have taken, or what's the estimate that it would take in terms of dollars and time. And then the team actually works on it. They input their information as they're progressing through. And it then comes into what's called the sprint backlog. Now these terminologies here are slightly new to everyone, but every team is broken down into a series of what's called sprints. In other words, blocks of work or blocks of time. Typically, a sprint is 1 to 4 weeks, but the industry standard seems to be 2. So what happens is that, let's take Public Works, for instance. Let's say that they're repaving South Trade Street or something of that nature. So what they do is they say, okay, this whole project's going to take about 2 months. And we're going to break that up into 2-week time slots. And in that 2-week time slots, we're going to fill that with an assortment of tasks that are going to happen. For instance, we're going to take the top off or do demolition or whatever, and then we're going to do a sub base and on and on and on. So we go through these sprints, and as we're going through the sprints, every morning for 15 minutes, the entire team gets together, either remotely or in person, and they talk about what is happening in that project and with those tasks. And it's called a daily Scrum meeting. And the word Scrum comes from the rugby. It's rugby terminology. So in other words, when you see the typical rugby picture of everybody huddled together, that's where it comes from. And that's basically what it is. It's a team meeting, and we're all together and we're all speaking with each other and talking about what's called impediments. So we discuss the impediments, and it's the responsibility of the product owner, or in this case, the department director, to remove impediments immediately so that the team can continue on. So this cycle repeats over and over and over until the project is finished. Now, we're at the very end of each 2-week sprint. There's what's called a sprint review, and that is where the team gets together and they talk about basically, how did we do? You know, what is it that, how did we get to this point? What is it that we need to do? And especially in the sprint retrospective, it's a moment in time, which, by the way, is an extraordinary meeting. It's when all the team members talk to each other and say, you know, these are things we need to stop doing, or these are things we need to start doing, or these are things we need to continue to do. But whatever the case may be, it's a very open and honest discussion with each other to how to improve the process. So any questions here? Good. Now the software, and we'll get into that in a moment, but the software that collects this data from the field actually breaks it down into sprints. So in other words, you can see what the expectation was versus the actual expenditure of time and energy during that sprint. Now, this is only a sample of the dashboards that are present in various softwares that handle these daily tasks. But it gives the department director an idea of where we are in terms of what we estimated this job to do versus what it actually was. And it gives you the ability to see graphically where we are not performing as we had expected to. Now, this also, by the way, it keeps track of defects. Now, in this particular thing, we would say, in the case that I was using in road repair, for instance, a defect might be, well, it might be actually a defect. Might be that we got a bad batch of asphalt or something of that nature. So that caused that particular task to either get moved or to take a longer period of time that it would normally do, because we would have to replace that particular defect. So again, this is just one of many, many ways of presenting the data. Now, the Agile, before I go into the final part of this, the Agile transformation is literally a transformation. It's not something that happens overnight. Bank of America has been going through the Agile transformation process now for about 3 years. Wells Fargo about the same time. Duke Energy about 5 years. And what happens is that it's what's called internal disruption. And the term disruption in this particular case, and in most cases, is actually a positive word. For instance, Tesla is disrupting the automotive industry, or Amazon is disrupting the retail industry. So this is the term for this is internal disruption or transformation. So it's a whole different way of looking at things, where the actual team members are managing their own product flow, their own workflow, and they work up, and the middle management becomes more of a overseer and a remover of impediments. So any questions so far? Now, in practical terms, let me see if I can, my mouse is going to cooperate with me today. Give me a moment. Okay, let me see if I can, here we go. Okay, so this is one of many pieces of software, but it is the world leader in this type of what's called Agile Transformation. And it's called Jira, and it's written by a company called Atlassian. And Atlassian is the world leader in Agile Transformation software. Now, this is a very, very simple project that I just put together last night just to demonstrate. But basically, it's kind of going over what I just finished talking about. And that is, we're going to repave South Trade Street. We're going to break it up this period of time. We're going to break it up into 2 sprints. In the first sprint, we're going to demolition and remove, and we're also going to grade and slope, and we're also going to prepare the subbase. But if you notice, these others down here don't have a sprint that they belong to. So I'm going to demonstrate how the product owner, or in this case, the department director, would actually perform that. So we go into the backlog. And if you recall from the drawing, the backlog consists of all the tasks. And here they are down here that are still have things to do. So in this case, they're in the order in which they would be performed. But all I have to do is grab this and move it up into this sprint. And that task is now going to appear in that particular sprint. So let me just go ahead and open this up. So it's a way of having a visual representation of where things are. Now, here is the incredible part about all of this, is this, and by the way, if I open up, let me just do that very quickly. If I just click on one of these and open it up, I haven't filled out the information here because of time constraints, but all the fields in here, such as the description, by the way, there's what's called an acceptance criteria, and each task has to have what's called a definition of done. So before you even start the task, you have an acceptance criteria that defines what done is. And so you cannot move it to the done status. For instance, right here, if my mouse will cooperate, here we go. All right, you can change this to in progress or done, but you can't go to done until the definition of done has been completed. Another way of looking at this is if we go here to the sprints, you can actually see which items are still in the to-do, and you can actually go up here and see an item that Bobby has to do, for instance. Now, Bobby, when he's done and he's reached the definition of done, he can personally move that, excuse me, my mouse is not cooperating. So he can personally move that over, let me see if I can do it. Yeah, here we go. So that field person moves it over to in progress. So that way the department manager automatically knows exactly which tasks are being worked on just by review. But here's the incredible part about it. In these agile transformation companies that are going through it, it is total 100% transparency. All the way from the CEO to the company to the bottom of the company has access to these boards. So every single department can see what every other department's doing, and they can actually coordinate their efforts with each other based on that. As a matter of fact, there's what's called cross-functional teams, and they can actually work together on projects with this technique. Now, having said all of that, this is what's going on in the corporate world. It's going on in government. It's going on in education. And in education specifically, they're using this agile transformation to have the students decide what their tasks are and self-arrange themselves and organize themselves and go through their own teaching program while the teacher acts as the product owner or the overseer. So it has applications everywhere. It's a totally different way of looking at the world. And I thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to expose you to this new technique. Any questions?
Any questions or comments for Commissioner Tofano? Hazen.
Excuse me. I, you know, Commissioner Tofano, you've mentioned you want to talk about this, right? And I guess like there's lots of things.
Hazen, I'm not sure your mic's working.
Oh,
Or
I'm
get
probably not
closer.
close enough. Am I close enough now?
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
So I guess there's a couple thoughts going through my brain. Of course, obviously I'm at the end of my tenure. The way I've approached leadership in local government is I am reticent to be the first. Now that, I'm not saying that's all good, but I like it when an organization that I admire, and there's lots of them, Apex, Cary, Morrisville, somebody that's our size, just to see what the pitfalls are. And there's some examples out there, like Salisbury got into the fiber optic business, cable business, started competing against Time Warner, and Davidson got into it too, and they ended up selling their system for a big loss. So I always like kind of learning from other folks. I guess for me, at least, it's that's the balance against like just being stubborn and old fashioned and mired in the way we've always done things, which I also think is dangerous. I do think kind of for our organization, the fact of the matter is we are very lean, and example is finance with 3 people. Some organizations have budget or management analysts that really can, I think, focus on this kind of stuff, or performance management. There's, different things. I to be, frank about it, I don't think we're set up to kind of this extra, the department heads are running as fast as they can, in my mind. Same thing with finance, and like, where's the capacity? And I struggle with the capacity. And if the board said, well, we'd like you to hire a budget analyst to help us look into this, or, even if you said, let's do it, or something like that, I would push back. First of all, I'd say, well, guess what? We got HR with 2 people scrambling. We heard from Susan yesterday. If y'all have ever seen her scheduler, you think, oh, this person is massively overworked. And well, so I guess I would say, I would suggest going through the budget process, watching how the budget process works. It's a line item budget. We are small. Department heads can talk about the different projects. If the board said, well, we really want to explore this, I would say, give us some time to see what's been done in a local government, preferably in North Carolina, so that we can see how it would work. But I definitely think staff would need to be hired to kind of segment out, because everybody else is just so focused on their own departments.
Yeah, Hazen, if I just wanted to reiterate that this was for exposure purposes. Yeah. Now, the beauty of this particular way of doing things is that it's all based on the worker down at the bottom in the team. And they're the ones that actually input the data. Matter of fact, it causes even an increase in efficiency above that level, because all of the data entry and cross correlation is done at the very bottom. Now, if at any time you're interested in possibly doing a small beta program, that's the way it normally starts. It just is a one department, and you take a very narrow focus, and maybe something of the order of 1 hour a week or something of that nature, where you train the department head and expose them to this particular philosophy, and make the decision whether or not it's good for your organization. It's not good for everybody, but you don't know until you try. And the best thing to do is just to maybe take a very tiny focus, small pilot program. Public Works is a great example because it's more of a task oriented. But I'm not asking that right now. All I'm doing is saying, this is what the world is doing. And I think it's very exciting. It's been going on now for over 20 years. Toyota was the originator of this concept. And every major corporation is following along. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to present this philosophy to you.
Can I ask one other question? So if we said Agile Transformation, would everybody know what is that the common language across the industry?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
I'd like to make a couple comments and perhaps get some clarification. You started your presentation out showing a financial reporting model that's different than what we do now, and then you went into the Agile Transformation. So I guess what you're saying is the person that's actually conducting the work would be assisting with activity-based costing, because they would be saying this activity is in progress and it took me 8.5 hours to complete it. And that's how that's how these two ideas about costing and
exactly. In other words, the cost accounting philosophy of an activity is the same as this task in the Agile Transformation project. So in other words, when the worker is actually doing the work, they're inputting that cost data into this task envelope, and that feeds all the way up.
Well, let me say that it seems very onerous at first blush, but I have been exposed to a lot of these types of activities with Toyota, and I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. So, removing waste, et cetera. So it is something I think that we might want to look at in, as you say, in one department at some point in the future. Of course, you have to get staff to buy into it, but if you go through this, I've done this in my corporate life. At the end of the day, it does make your life easier, because it is, you have real-time data on every single task. As a manager, chief, you can see everything that's going on in your entire department real time. So it's onerous, and it's like, seems overwhelming, but there is some benefit to this type of activity. I certainly wouldn't want to say, hey, let's do it for the entire town and let's go do, an Agile Transformation. But perhaps if we had a brave department that wanted to try it, if you go through this process, I think at the end of the day, if you get it up and rolling, it makes your life easier, I think, as a manager. But
and also a quick comment. First of all, the software to do this is free up until a certain point. This particular software would be able to handle 10 department managers, and it's absolutely free. So, and it's online. The second thing is, this is what I do during the day. So if there's ever any need to do that, you desire to do that, you wouldn't have to hire anybody. I would be more than happy to devote whatever time is necessary in order to go through the process.
yeah, I would suggest as a next step that maybe we buy a couple of the Agile Transformation for Dummies, not to say,
yeah, actually,
a simplified book, and maybe buy a couple copies and see if anybody's interested. I wouldn't want to force this on anyone, but it does definitely have benefits.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mark.
I think there's a couple of questions.
Commissioner Garner.
I have a quick comment to say that I feel like this is not a board decision to make, but is something that we leave up to management and department heads to see if they want to start going this way. And in that case, let them buy the Agile for Dummies and let them go at their own pace in discovering if this is something of interest.
Absolutely. It has to have buy-in from staff. I would not want to.
Yeah, of course. And matter of fact, that's the important part. There has to be a buy-in from the bottom up. Again, thank you.
All right. Appreciate that presentation. We're now going to move on to the next item, Commissioner Salaries and Technology Allowance. Tanya.
Good morning. I was asked by Hazen to put together a chart. I know that the board has been discussing their salaries for quite some time now. So I did look at our 14 competitive locations that we normally look at, and put together the chart that talks about salary plus the perks that the board members get. And then the column to the right is the total possible annual compensation if all of the perks are doled out. I don't know what role I play in this conversation as opposed to just providing the information for the board to have a discussion.
All right, thank you. Just philosophically, several of us had this conversation. Several of us had the experience that I did when I got elected as a commissioner. I did not know that the job paid any money. I thought it was a volunteer position, and Lori handed me a tax form and said, fill this out. And I said, for what purpose? And I didn't realize that you got paid. So none of us certainly do this job for the wealth, as you can tell by the salaries. But I do think that our board members should be paid it's almost an honorarium, but enough money to, cover gasoline and time away from home and family. And so I think it's reasonable to, at least pay our commissioners at least the average of what other folks get paid in our area for this. It is a lot of work, as you all are aware. I know for a fact on many occasions, commissioners, including myself, have worked 40, 50, 60 hours in a week. And, for $5,500, that's not a lot of pay for asking people to put that kind of time in. As far as the mayor's compensation, for whatever reason, I think it was many years ago, the mayor of Matthew's salary was raised to its current rate, which is on this chart. And I think it's towards the high end of the folks around here. So I make it rain, when I go home with my $19,000 a year salary. But
Can we scroll down to the Matthews folks?
yeah, so there's it's kind of in between the two pages there. My 19,650, and our commissioners make 5,500. So I am not, I would not want or desire any increase into the mayor's compensation, but I do think commissioners should be paid. Now, we had an interesting, we were going to do this at our last budget cycle, and we found out that it had to be done during the budget, right, Hazen? So I had promised a few commissioners, yes, we'll address this at the next meeting, and then we couldn't address it because we had to do it in the budget cycle. So we missed out. So that was a kind of a miss. So currently the commissioner's salary is $5,500 with a $1,800 a year allowance for technology. It's been my experience that most of you rarely use your entire technical or your technology allowance. So, I'd like to talk about what's the will of the board. Again, I know that none of us do this for money, but you can see what others make. Huntersville, the commissioners make $8,000. Concord, $10,440. Yes, sir.
An expense item there that pays a certain amount of money to cover transportation costs of private vehicles, your phone costs, things like that. That can be increased at any time. You don't have to wait a cycle to do that.
Understand. Yeah, if we look at Monroe, the council members make $12,525. Mint Hill commissioners only make $5,000. I think they're very on the low end. So anyway, it's what's the will of the board? There's been a talk. There hasn't been an increase in many, many years. And I would be fine in making an adjustment. So what's the will of the board? Commissioner Whitley.
Thank you, Mayor. I came on the board in 2016. That year, we did not take an increase in salary. And I'm like John, I didn't realize we got paid for it either. I thought it was volunteer. But at the same time, we did increase our technology allowance. I think we were doing 33,000 for 2 years. I think we increased it to 36. Is that right?
So actually it was 3,500 for 2 years. And one of the
Okay.
commissioners didn't like it because he didn't like the way the math worked out. So he
And that
he
was- that
proposed, he
was
wanted to
Jeff
raise
Miller.
it up $100
Jeff
to go to 3,600.
Record, his name was Jeff Miller. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct.
So this is what I would like to see, just for the service that we render. We do a good job. I would like to see us move up to 9,000 for a salary, keep the allowance as it is. I think that'll be fair conversation. Also, I think Hazen, you mentioned this as well. Going forward, just put us in the loop with as the town move forward, we move forward. That way we won't be left behind six years. So if we're talking about 15, we didn't have a raise, and I know, talking about 7 years since the commissioners have adjusted our salary. That's but if we put it in the budget that as the town get increase, we move up. I don't know how much percentage, just enough to keep us cost of living. I guess that's what the word I'm looking for. But that's my recommendation, Mayor, is move us up to 9,000, keep the technology as it is. And that's where I would like.
Yes, sir. Mr. Buckley.
Don't want to throw cold water on this, but I think under the statute that you may increase the compensation of commissioners, has to be a part of the budget, but it only applies to the next elected term. You cannot increase it during your current term. So you can't just do it at the next annual budget. You have to wait and make it applicable to the newly elected after the next election. But you can't, but the board can change the mayor's salary during any current term. That's just the way it's set up.
All right. Foiled again. So we have to wait till another election cycle. Yeah, please do. That seems kind of ridiculous when we can change everybody else's salary in the entire town, but can't adjust the board salary.
So I get if that's the case, Charlie, I get the intention, right? So, because there are stories in city in Bell, I think it was Bell, California, they had board members making over $100,000, part-time board members. But you
Where's that?
yeah. So you
that.
said, Charlie, let's say you're right. What you're saying is right, but the board could increase what so which could fall under, let's see. Oh, you saying like a technology allowance or an auto allowance or like under Charlotte, it says expenses. I don't even know what that means, to tell you the truth. Does anybody else have expenses besides Charlotte? Can somebody scroll through there you go.
Could we have a designation for expenses? But Charlie, I would like for you to check that to make sure, but all right, thank you.
Well, Mayor,
Anyone else?
Mayor, just another quick point on the technology stuff. My understanding of the way you all do it is you produce receipts and those
Correct.
are reimbursed. In a lot of the locations, that's not the case. They get a set amount per month for a technology fee. So I don't know if that's based on what Charlie's saying, something you may want to consider.
Yeah, I know in previous discussions, we talked about the tax ramifications of that. I don't know if that changes. I don't think, is it true that you don't have to declare your technology allowance as compensation? I'm not sure. Commissioner Tofano.
Yes, I would be an advocate if there was any consideration of raising any salaries at all, or stipends, or whatever you want to call them, of eliminating the expense for technology. If you notice, a lot of these places are supplying the iPad and the iPhone and etc. Personally, that's my preferred way of doing it for numerous reasons. It keeps the technology consistent among all the commissioners, and also it belongs to the town and can be passed on to other commissioners as they're elected. And so it could be in terms of a one-time expense in some cases. So at any rate, if there's any consideration, I would not consider any increases unless the technology allowance was eliminated.
Again, there are tax ramifications for that. We need to find out what those are, but there are tax ramifications.
And yeah, and especially the way the technology allowance document is written. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but at the current time, you as a commissioner could allocate your portion to another commissioner. Definitely would have to be changed, even if it was kept.
Commissioner Garner.
Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner. Wow.
You can make it during the budget ordinance. Doesn't matter about the next term.
Thank you. Commissioner Garner.
I guess I'm hesitant to get rid of the technology allowance, and I've shared this many times before, and I want to drive it home that we are still in a pandemic, and who knows how long it will go on, but there are certainly future pandemics coming our way. Over the past year, there were multiple times where that $200 was the only money coming into our home. We were living as a family of four off of $100 a week. If you have ever gone through unemployment in North Carolina, it is a tragedy, which is going down a rabbit hole. However, a $36 toner cartridge is a big deal if you have $100 for a family of four. I would advocate highly that we put it into a future ballot after new terms that we do increase our pay, because I think staff could attest that I spend 20 hours a week working on this job, if not more. It is something that I do because I love it, but that paycheck came in at essential times for our family. It's necessary, as is the technology budget. I also think raising, now that we are in comfortable times, we sit comfortably in our income, as do most of us. And I won't make any assumptions of the board, but I would think that many people sitting on the board are comfortable with their income. Increasing and maintaining that technology balance, though, opens the door for other candidates who are of lower income to come in and have a say and a seat at the table. And I think that Matthews tends to have the same candidates coming in over and over. The more we can open that door for other people, the better we are off as a community.
Teresa.
Just speak to the technology. The way you have it now, it is not taxable income because it's reimbursement. If you get paid a set amount with your check, it.
Right. So that was what came up before, is that if you move the technology allowance into salary, then it's taxable. So just FYI. Commissioner Whitley.
With that being said, I would like to see, and I just did crunch some number. I'm looking at Monroe. No, it's showing 35. It's pretty. Okay, so I go back again. I would like to see the base for commissioners 9,000. And I would just be honest with you, I don't mind keeping records, but I got enough stuff to keep up with. And now when I go see Lori and she got to get copies and just keep it and take a workload off of her. I mean, if we're gonna pay taxes on it, I see that Monroe has $125 a month for cell phone. Is that, and I'm assuming that's paid each month in the payroll. Is that correct? I wouldn't advocate that much for us. I know my cell phone bill is averaging about $93 a month. So
who's your carrier? Hook me up.
Verizon. And I know my internet, I use quite a bit of that, and especially with, so 9,000 for a base salary. I would say $90 for a cell phone, and the internet, $30 for the internet. Office expense, I know I buy a lot of ink and paper to print and stuff at home as well. And Laura does the big one. It's got a lot of paperwork. Laura print those off for me. I wasn't keeping those numbers. What does that come up to? 9 plus 90 plus 30.
While Monroe also gets $300 a month for travel and an insurance plan. Wow.
Well, we have an insurance plan.
But you got to pay. We pay for it. I don't know if they pay for theirs. It
Well,
just says
says-
offer,
it says
offer. Yeah.
They probably pay for it too. It's just
Yeah.
offer.
I would like to get a clarification from Teresa if it is paid in a monthly stipend like that, would that be taxable? Okay, so again, right now you can turn those expenses in with receipts and be reimbursed and not have to pay taxes on them. So you're opening yourself up to more taxes if you do it this way, Commissioner
Mr.
Whitley.
Mayor,
Sir.
I knew I wasn't totally crazy. Fixed allowances can only be changed for the next term, not during the term. So I knew there was a next term, but it's on fixed allowances, but on compensation, it's just an annual budget ordinance.
Fixed allowances meaning like a technology. So you're saying we still can change compensation,
Well, I think, no, compensation is not, they're two different things.
right? So
It's expense allowance. If it's fixed, it has to be for the next term of commissioners.
all right, so I guess to get back to the issue at hand, what is the temperature of the board, from those I haven't heard from, to increase your salary to some number, Commissioner McCool, or Mayor Pro Tem McCool, sorry.
I agree with Commissioner Whitley. I think we need to bump it up. It's been a long time. Again, I was also in the camp of I didn't know. I remember when Lori asked for my tax tax stuff. I was like, do I have to pay y'all to do this job? It was the first thing that came in my head. But no, I think what Larry says at 9,000 is more than fair. I mean, I used to look at some of these in Monroe. We're pretty close in population, and they're making 12.5. So I think at 9,000 it's fair. And then maybe looking for doing the fixed allowances for the next board would be something I'd be in favor as well. I mean, internet is crazy expensive, cell phones expensive, all that sort of thing. So I would be in favor.
Commissioner Hoover.
I don't have a problem with raising the salary. And I know we have to have computers and cell phones to do our job and the time that we do on our own at home. But I do have an issue with the allowance and would like to see it cut back, or if not, just completely taken away.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Urban, do you want to weigh in on this? I think we've heard from everyone else.
Is it on?
Yes, sir.
Is it? Thank you.
Yep.
The will of the board, I personally, I need to make sure that expenses are covered. I think that's fair to everybody. You use your phone a lot, your computer, whatever. But I, like you, Mr. Mayor, in 2009, I thought you volunteered for this position, and I was willing to make that sacrifice. And I still am willing to do the same. I've never used technology allowance. I'm the one that transfers it. I give it back to planning staff or somebody else. From that standpoint, I feel like George Fawcett or Cress Query telling a story. 2009 was the Great Recession. I wasn't pulling a check. I was taking my resources and paying my employees and keeping the boat afloat. I still thought this was volunteer work. I think it's incumbent upon us as quote unquote sort of patriots. I make that sacrifice. So I have no reason to have it go up or anything like that. Whatever the board wants to do is fine by me, but I would not vote for a raise.
Okay, thank you. And you're going red there on the mic. So I understand that position. I also think that Commissioner Garner made a good point that we may be, by raising this and maintaining a technology allowance, may be encouraging those who aren't as comfortably financially as some of us to run and participate. Yeah, right now the technology allowance, for the record, is voluntary. Some of us use some of us use it, some of you use a portion of it, some of us don't use it, or some of us reallocate it. So it is kind of voluntary whether or not you use that. So I suppose we can put this on a upcoming board meeting agenda. Hazen?
Can hear me okay? Okay.
If you can do like Ricky Bobby and put it really close to your
Yeah,
mouth,
really.
that'd be good.
Here, I would suggest maybe being lazy, but to what I hear some around the $9,000. And I would, if y'all want to bring it up at a board meeting, we could take a action to the budget. I'm struggling a little more with the saying we can't mess with it. So I would recommend keeping it at $3,600 a term, or $1,800, comes out to $1,800 a year for kind of math purposes. And then y'all can smoke it over as we come item, and y'all can say we like it or not. That's the other way to handle it. But if y'all want it, you can do it that way.
Well, I want to be fully transparent with the public so they know what we're doing. And I'm sure this will come out anyway, but I just, I don't think that Matthews necessarily has to be or should be on the very lowest end of what commissioners are paying, because we're noble people and just want to get paid really low. I mean, I think we should be paid something similar to our most equivalent counterparts. And again, not requesting any adjustment in the mayor's compensation, but I do think it's time to bump up the commissioner's pay a bit. So I think perhaps we should put it on a agenda for a public meeting so that the public can clearly see what we're doing. We're not trying to hide anything. It's out in the open, being fully transparent. Commissioner Whitley?
Yeah, we talked about that last year, and we thought we would be able to do it, but nevertheless, I like Hazen, because when we talked about it last year, it's not a lot of money that's gonna affect, and I think we can afford to go 9,000, but I would like to see it put into the budget, and then we could let whoever needs to see it, but the community gonna approve the whole budget anyway, so they can see our where we raised our salary to 9,000, and then keep the technology. From what Charlie's saying, we can't do anything with that anyway till the next election. That would be my recommendation. Just roll into the budget, and when the money's getting got, get it. I've always said that.
Yeah, I just want to be fully transparent with the public so they know what's going on.
Just to clarify that, on a change in the expenses applies to the next term, not the current term, but you have to take that vote to do that.
Understand. Yeah. So if we want to do anything with expenses, and that's probably another topic, but
put it into the budget,
right,
before it becomes effective. Can't do my budget.
Mr. Willie.
So with that being said, I want to make sure we don't miss the annual budget again. I would like to see us put the 9,000 in the annual budget, so when the full budget is passed, it's already in there. Is that,
So this would go into effect
yeah,
next year.
well, July 1. July 1.
Yeah, our next fiscal.
So from a staff perspective, I hear you, Commissioner Whitley. Down, put it on the agenda for discussion, unless you tell us something different.
Right, what's the will of the board? I'm one of 7.
I mean, we're discussing now. And we already had a year past that we missed it. So that's my recommendation if that's fair.
Commissioner Garner.
I think somewhere either I'm not listening or I'm not understanding. But this would be 2024, or it would be this year.
It's the fiscal year.
July 20.
We go into effect in July.
Okay, so I am missing something because I thought it was for each term. You had to.
The technical allowance is for.
We are allowed to adjust compensation of board members.
Okay, then I would agree that it needs to be a public discussion before.
And this is a public discussion right here, but it's more of a public discussion if we do it at a board meeting. I think it's
Right, we don't-
more eyes.
Here, we don't have public comment. We need to have public comment before we make any decisions about how we pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah, but does that not go into the budget where the public hear the whole budget anyway? If it goes into the budget, when we present the budget to the town and it's a public hearing, they see the whole thing and they see that in there. You know, we talked about the public hearing a year ago and we had it. And when we came up to put it in there, that's when we realized that we had missed the budget. And see,
I don't see that it would hurt anything to allow people to speak outside of the public budget. I think as much transparency as possible through this process puts us in a better position. I don't know of anybody who thinks we don't work hard enough to deserve this.
Commissioner Tofano.
I agree with the salary increase, and I also agree with Renee on the expenses part of it. But I'd like to ask Renee if you would consider restructuring perhaps in where the town supplies the computer, the phone, and the printer, and that you or any of us would simply submit receipts for paper, toner, things of that nature. That way it keeps I'm assuming that would not be a tax expense because obviously it's owned by the town. And that way it would keep the technology the same. We could turn them in to the next set of commissioners. The overall cost to the public would be lower. They would give us all the technology we need, plus give reimbursement for any office expenses such as paper and toner and things of that nature. So that's my recommendation.
I strongly disagree because I know I've not taken a cent of the technology allowance. And I think if we're buying a new laptop, a new phone, and a printer, that's going to be significantly more of a cost on the town if we're doing it as it comes up. It's also a part of it is a part of our salary, I think, doing that. And then technology gets outdated. So you're going to have to buy new phones for the commissioners every 2 to 4 years anyway. I think it'd actually be less cost effective to do it that way as we're doing it. You take $500 here, $500 there. I'm not taking a cent of it. So, I don't think that's cost effective at all.
And sometimes you'll see, like, I know county commission, maybe the school board, I'm not sure, they carry around 2 phones and 2 computers. I'm not crazy about that idea. I like the efficiency of having it, that I can keep all of my stuff in one place. I don't know that I'm going to dig my heels in and say one way or the other, but I like the convenience of being able to do different types of work on one computer.
Yeah, exactly. Mark, you and I had that discussion. I also would not like carrying around 2 phones, and for as far as transparency, all of our emails are archived already anyway. Lori has them, and it's not any more transparent to have 2 phones. But I understand your point, Mark. I don't know. I can go with the will of the board on that suggestion as well. But as far as bringing this up as a separate line item at a upcoming board meeting so that we're fully transparent, who's in favor of that? So I think, yeah, we're gonna do that. Thank you. I think that's the way to go. We absolutely don't want the public to think we're trying to, give ourselves a raise under the cover of night where they don't know about it. So I think that's the way to go. So I think we beat this one to death. We can, Mark, we can look at expense reports as separately. We can't change it anyway until the next term. So moving forward, we'll look at that and perhaps make some changes. You had some other changes about commissioners being able to pass their allowance to another commissioner that you wanted to eliminate. So we can make those changes. All right. Next, we'd like to look at, speaking of compensation, we'd like to look at employee compensation. Tanya McGovern.
Thank you, Mayor. I know this topic has come up multiple times since we've done our pay study through the MAPS group in the spring of 2018. Based on some benchmark data that I was able to pull together of just some key positions that tend to be the same across municipalities, it does appear that we have fallen approximately 10.63% behind the desired 60th percentile of the market placement that the board wanted us to be at in 2018. We're also in the South region looking at a CPI over the last year of 8.4% increase in cost. So inflation is going through the roof. We're dealing with the pandemic still. We're dealing with the Great Resignation trend, the negative stigma that's around police based on some tragic issues that have happened in our country. We're hurting. We're hurting on money. We're hurting on people. As of the time of this memo, we were at a 9.94% vacancy rate. That's currently 18 vacant positions across the town. That's just full-time positions. And we know of 5 pending retirements that are not included in that number. And those retirements are between now and June 1st. We're behind. We know we've had the discussion over and over, no tax increase this year. To move us significantly would be extremely difficult with the current budget that we're looking at. So I'm coming to you today to ask for ideas, ask for your thoughts on this, and see, where you think we can potentially go and what we can potentially do. We do know one thing that we definitely need is a new class and compensation study. We need to bring in the professionals to look at this. I can do benchmark data. I am not a class and comp specialist, and make sure that we are, in fact, look at all of our positions and make sure that we move all of our positions to where they appropriately should be. Because in the benchmark data, you'll see, some positions are way behind, some are not so far behind. It's kind of all over the place. So we need a holistic look at all of our positions to really be able to paint the true picture of where we are.
Right. A couple comments. Study is a 4-letter word generally to me, but I want to make sure that if we hire such a person, and I've said this last time we did this exercise, that we don't hire someone that's regurgitating data that's readily available on the internet and charging the town thousands of dollars for that privilege. So I want somebody to really do their homework, and to just leave it at that. The question I have for Hazen is, we seem like we're just never able to get to the finish line. How are other communities raising their salaries, 20% continually? Where are they getting their money from? Because I think we're not any different than any other community. How are these communities just forever giving massive raises and we're always behind the 8 ball?
So it's a great question. So here's what I think happened. So 4 years ago, did a pay and classification study. The board said, we want to be at 60% of the market. We were able to demonstrate if we do X, we can be at 60% of the market. I think and we're just coming out of whatever the latest troubles were, but I think we were one of the first towns to do the pay and classification study. So we were comparing to, I guess kind of old data, and then everybody else, oh, Matthews has been doing a pay study, so everybody else does the pay study together. That's my theory. The other thing that happened was really to make this work, you got to do an increase, and we typically do 3%, right? We do merit increase. Rarely have we done the cost of living increase. And so whatever, folks go up in their range, but the base doesn't grow. And that's what we've seen. And a couple times we've said, okay, well, no rate, let's not do raises. Let's just do across the board 30%, 3%, and bumped up the whole thing. And then we've had this labor deal that we can give you horror stories. I mean, we can give you horror stories, like our risk management. How many times we've gone up for 6 times?
I think 4.
4 times to the risk manager.
We're on round 5 for facilities maintenance technician.
That's right.
Police officer stays open year round. I mean, and still several vacancies.
I think what's interesting about where we're at, and we are a decent town to work. I think we're a good town to work for. I think people are treated well. You guys respect the staff. You guys aren't hostile to the bureaucrats or bureaucracy. And I think that I think our department heads treat people well. We're really at this point where we know we're struggling hiring people, and police, that's a national problem. Fire, it's probably a national problem. But how do we not lose people? I mean, if we lost, just using Susan Habina Woolard as our town engineer, I don't know how we would replace that person. I know in Hillsborough, they've been looking for a town engineer for over 7 months. Some of these jobs are impossible to find. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I don't know if people just stop looking. So I think the question for is how do we stop the bleeding? And I do think a pay classification study is the right thing to do. However, you got to pay the piper. Once we hear, okay, we got to put in X amount of dollars to bring us up to 60% or between 50 and 60 or whatever, it's going to cost serious dollars. We raised taxes last year, right? We all know we raised taxes last year. So, I mean, I do think a pay classification study is in order. If you do it too early, you're getting a snapshot of time, and other people could be changing their numbers too. So it's got to be strategic when we decide to do it.
So have our surrounding communities massively raised their tax rates? Because how are they affording to pay these rates? We don't have the money to pay it. I mean, we're going to have to raise taxes to match this. I don't see where we're going to squeeze
I
out
don't
everybody.
know. Like Stallings. I mean, they're not Cornelius, as rich, tax value.
Right.
But their starting pay for their police was $44,000. Ours was 40. Did they say, well, this is just a top priority and we're going to find the money? Or I mean, sales tax has gone up, but I mean, property tax is where you get 60% of your revenue.
Got a question for Becky. The 2024 information that you presented yesterday, will it be able, when we do the reval, is it going to be able to absorb some of this?
Sure. Yeah. So we do have a placeholder in the budget forecasting model for FY24. We've plugged in $500,000 as a placeholder, but based on this data, that feels low. The other thing that we're of course facing is that feels like a really long time from now. Given the current vacancy rates that we have, maintaining the status quo between now and then feels very precarious given the difficulty that we're having at this time. Just to throw out some of the things we've been talking about internally is, we do have a lot of lapsed salaries because we have such a high vacancy rate. Can that be reappropriated into FY23 to help fund an implementation sooner? And then continue to implement during reval. There's dollars available in our existing budget that will roll to fund balance. that, I think staff would be happy to try to hang on to as much of those as possible to help fund something like this. This is a concern for every single department that we have in town.
Thank you. I think getting to at least the 60% percentile needs to be a real goal of our board and a priority. Commissioner Urban.
So Hazen, we went through that exercise with the premium pay piece. So we're saying that just got sucked in, absorbed, and kicked out the door.
Well, yeah. So the deal is reoccurring versus, right, the premium pay is really a 18-month bonus, or a bonus that's being extended over 18 months. That does raise our officers to $44,000, but that is just an 18-month. And and it's for police, and it's for a variety of folks that are frontline as well.
Right. And the goal was in the budget forecasting model is to sort of carry
it was to
from
bridge.
18 to
It was to try to bridge.
Okay.
So it's been a partial offset. The numbers that are up there do not include premium pay, but also not every position up there qualifies for premium
Right,
pay.
those are public facing.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stefano.
Yes, we're looking at a one-off situation here for individuals. What would it cost to bring all the firefighters and all of the police officers up to the 60th percentile for the town of Matthews on a yearly basis? What will be that cost?
That's not a number that we have run. Plan. Our pay plan has always moved as one, because if you start bumping only your police officers, then they start bumping into our detectives. They start bumping into our corporals, our sergeants. You start having compression issues internally because you've disrupted the internal equity that has been established by the spacing that is currently between the positions. So you start having this domino effect of now it's actually, there's no salary advantage to having the additional responsibilities that those other positions take on.
Nevertheless, I would like to see that number or a number. And if perhaps the police chief could help us understand what it would take on a yearly basis for us to, and also the fire chief, what it would take us on a yearly basis to bring our firefighters and our police officers, regardless of their rank, up to a 60th percentile. That number on a yearly basis would be important to know.
So when you say that, you're just saying those two departments?
For the time being, I think personally, to me, fire and police are extraordinarily important. We have a retention problem that is unbelievable in these two departments. And I just want to see that number. I just want to see what that yearly number would be. And that would give us an idea on how perhaps we need to adjust our budget in order to make that happen.
Commissioner Garner.
I think I would like to see these numbers with the premium pay, understanding that the intention is to make that a permanent change. But I would also like to see, as Becky suggested, an equitable raise across the board, because I know that our police officers and our fire department don't operate in silos, and the staff that supports them to achieve their goals and their job are just as vital, but perhaps not as in the spotlight as those that are out in the town and in the community. So I think just this pay study is going to achieve that. We can look at those numbers when it happens, and then that's when we negotiate what we can do in terms of raising the taxes or what we have available.
Mayor Pro Tem McCool.
Just looking at this, there's two really, well, the one that really glares to me is the public works supervisor. We're almost $10,000 behind a year on that. What causes that to get so much farther behind than something like the finance specialist? Why did that fall behind so much and others maybe didn't? I gotcha. But that's wild to me. There were almost $10,000 behind the eight ball. I mean, that's just mind boggling.
Commissioner Garner said, kind of took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say the same thing. I'd like to see these numbers that reflect the premium pay that we're paying right now for 18 months or whatever. And to tag on to what Commissioner Tofano said, I would like to see what it would cost to raise all of our employees' pay. What is that? What is the delta for the entire organization to go to the 60 percentile per year?
So what I would suggest, based on what I hear y'all saying, is to actually do a pay classification study.
And then do the delta from that.
Right. We do
Yes.
that across the board. We can show premium pay, understanding that's a bonus, temporary bonus. I would also recommend, and Becky's right about this. I think the police chief's got $400,000 in lab salaries, in this year's budget. Now, somebody could say, well, let's plug that. Let's use that and plug it and raise everybody's salaries. But what happens, you have this ripple effect. It's reoccurring dollars. So we just got to be, if we do X, let's say now, and we're not going to raise taxes, let's fiscal year based on that, using that premise, the next year, you got to say, okay, just what in 24, it's going to cost X. So everybody's got to know what X is. And the only other thing I would say is, I think if we did it now, which I think would be a good idea, is be prepared to do a refresh in, I don't know if it's going to be February or March of 23, because that is going to be 8 months old. Everybody's going to go through some kind of raises, because the two managers in Mecklenburg County, the question was, what's everybody going to do about raises? Because we try to move as a group in Mecklenburg County with the towns to kind of hear what they're saying. So one of them says, for merit, I'm likely at 3.5%. I haven't come up with COLA, but it will be no less than 1%. So I don't know if that's 4.5% or 5%. Now, these are managers too. You got to remember what the board does and what the managers do. They don't always marry up, but they're not always polar opposites. And then the other one is that we're probably in the 3 to 4% merit plus some type of smaller percent for inflationary, like to total somewhere in the 5 to 6% range. So that means we're going to fall behind if these things fall through.
No, it sounds like you need to set your target at the 70 percentile to start with, because we're behind by the time we.
Well, I think 60% is very fair. I just would make a recommendation. I think it's a smart idea. We got the money to do it now. Just be prepared to do a refresh, which won't cost as much in February, so that next fiscal year 24, when you hope in theory implement it, you'll know, okay, and guess what? We're still at 60%, because you don't want a first year implementation be at 52% or something.
Becky?
Yeah, thanks. One thing that we had talked about that is a slight variation from what Hazen is saying is as we go into the 23 budget cycle, to squeeze as much of an across the board increase as possible as we can out of the 29.5 cent rate. So it wouldn't be a merit this year. It would be some kind of cost of living that everybody would get. Wait until after July 1 so that we know the true impact of what our neighbors are doing. Be completing the pay and class study then this fall based on the numbers that are in effect starting July 1. The money from this fiscal year will have rolled to fund balance. We can then be looking to do some type of movement based on the results of the pay and class study, say effective January 1st, with a one-time budget appropriation that this board would set, if this is a path that you wanted to go down, looking to then permanently fund at reval with the FY24 budget. So the fear right now is if we tried to hurry up and do a pay in class, the likelihood of getting it done before we had to present the budget, we're just too late in that process, and everything's going to change quite likely in July with our neighbors anyway. So we would already be working with out-of-date data. So that would be one path that we would suggest the board consider.
Okay. Again, I think I speak for the entire board that our employees are very important, and we want to make sure we take care of them and give them equitable pay for the work, the important work that they do, the excellent work that they do for our town. So, I want our employees to know that as Matthew's mayor, this is very important to me, and I know I speak for the entire board as well. So we will make adjustments somehow, some way.
So I guess I'm interested in the takeaway. I think Becky's point is well taken. And let me just say how I hear what she's saying is that, you know, we're about to go into the budget. We've already started the budget process, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the average raises for the towns is 5%. I'm speculating. Typically we give 3%. That's typically what we do. And of course it's a merit pool, so it's a range, but in this case, I think we're talking about a across the board increase. And I would think it would be a good idea if the board is supportive of this, like, okay, we get the inflation and we know we're behind. If the staff could find the money 4 or 5% going into fiscal 23, I think the premise is no raises. I mean, no tax increases, right? But if
That's correct.
If the board wants to, that's fine, we get it. If the board is comfortable empowering the staff to create a budget that is functional, like it always is, right? But can find I'm using 5% as a number, 5%, you know, if we brought something is that going to freak out the board? Like, I cannot believe there's a 5% raise in this budget and it needs to be 3%.
I don't think so, because we're in an era of extraordinary inflation, and you know, I don't know if we call that a COLA or just can do it as a general raise, but I would not have any heartburn if you can find the money in the budget without raising taxes. Absolutely, let's go 5%. I would support that.
Does that?
Anybody else have a thought? Seeing some head nodding and thumbs up, so I think that's the consensus of the board.
Okay.
And we have always been extremely fiscally conservative, but you know, these are extraordinary times. Commissioner Urban.
So yesterday's discussion was about ARPA funds and doing this and moving things over. I'd like to see staff's take in an investigation of how they would address the ARPA funds in order to address the reval, meaning we had discussion yesterday about half fire station and this bracket, and this bracket. How would you juggle things in light of the pay catch up? And frankly, it's the inflationary death spiral. Everybody raises to keep up. You can't. Inflation continues to go up. At some point you stall out and you break it, but it breaks a lot of people. I had to do a 5% across the board for my office. That was pretty painful because things aren't going in the right direction. Because you can't turn around and tell a client I'm raising my fees 5%. So you get that same impact. I get it, but you have to do it because at 10% inflation, they're still not catching up. So, but I'd like to see where staff's position would be is, you know, they may make a position of let's move more capital expenditures over on the ARPA side and let the reval really be the heavy lift for the sort of find that 18-month probationary period of filling the gap for raises, and then the reval picks up and keeps on going from there. So I'd like to see your strategy because we do heavily lean on you from that standpoint. Thank you.
Okay, let me just repeat it, just because I thrive better that way. What I hear Commissioner Urban saying is, we've talked about fiscal year 24 and what are we going to do with the reval, and really how painful that's going to be when somebody says, oh, that's an effective 20% tax increase, right? And what I hear you saying is there are things in that budget that are ARPA eligible funds, like the debt for the fire station is a good example. What could be moved out of that budget, that fiscal year 24 budget, that would relieve pressure on the tax rate? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no,
and paid for with ARPA funds.
Well, I guess what it is you're looking at the data day in and day out. We're sitting here at a high level, poking and probing and what if, whatever. You're looking at the data all the time. You're going to be able to more quickly analyze this information and look at the what ifs, meaning, guys, if we move the fire equipment apparatus all into ARPA and we move the fire station all into ARPA and we're just dealing with salaries in the reval aspect of it, it works better. Or no, actually, you know, fire equipment in the reval makes more sense because we spread the payments over 10 or 12 years. And in the end game, through attrition, blah, 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 our dollars spread better, that kind of thing. I'm just at this stage in the game, like all good accountants, you now got to put that hat on and run a lot of different scenarios. And you might have that aha moment like, okay, what is the least painful scenario, but we still achieve our goals? That's all. I just think it's real hard at our level to debate these things, but it's real easy at your level. You're in the trenches day in and day out, and you're going to be able to turn around to Clark and Kinnerborough and sit down and run numbers and keep running numbers. And then at some point, you know, the numbers will dictate something at somehow. But I think in this particular instance, we're going to have to lean really heavily on staff to look at all the options, just like you're studying a project, lots of options. What are all the options?
Yeah, when we talked about a heavy lift, and it goes back to the bond, I mean, if we talk about leaving, not adjusting the tax rate to be revenue neutral. So in 24, we're at 29.5. And then if the ask from staff is, oh, not only are we not going to be revenue neutral, we're going to move it up to 32.5 or whatever to pay our bills, that's going to be suicide for whoever is an elected official at that point. So, you know, we've really got to try to be as fiscally conservative as possible to try to make this happen, take care of our employees, but not raise taxes to that, you know, really high extent.
So just to comment quickly on that, in what I envision as a retiree taxpayer, but is that, let's say the bond passes in November 22, it's going to take time to pull everything together, even though if inflation continues, you're working against interest rates. That's a real dilemma. But from a kind of fiscal public management of the tax rate, that's the next fiscal year in 25. It's kind of crazy how far out that's when you talk about, Becky, you're shaking your heads. I guess you see it the same way. That's when you're talking about the bonds. Okay, how do you start paying bond debt in 25? So 24 is.
Yeah, 24 is, you know, that's going to be tough year.
Becky, do you see it the same way? Okay.
All right, fantastic. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, let's take a break until 10 o'clock. We're ahead of schedule. Lori brought her horsewhip into the break room and gave it a crack and said, get back to work. Keep us on track here. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 10. Wow, we're really flying through this. I think we're going to finish up early today. So we're going to discuss a vision plan for Parks and Matthews, Mr. Corey King. And once again, Corey is last on our agenda. Corey, you're up.
All right, thank you. And yeah, like Mr. Buckley just said, we are proud to be consistently running anchor on many of these discussions. That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Yep.
All right. All right, so we're going to talk about the vision for Parks and Matthews. And I'm going to just scroll down here. Hope you guys all had a chance to read through that awesome information. I do always think it's a good idea to look at what we currently have. So looking at our inventory of parks and trails, in this case in Matthews, you see we're doing a pretty good job with many parks. We've developed X number of parks since 2006 when this plan was originally designed and adopted. Same thing with community parks. So Purcell Halsey is included in that. And also McKee and Pleasant Plains is included in this inventory, though they're, call it undeveloped. And it also takes into account county parks, Idlewild Park, and also the Matthews Sportsplex is looked at as a regional park here in Matthews. So again, you see, looking at progress towards the standard set in 2006. Again, you see we've met what we've established as the Matthews standard for many parks and also for community parks. Regional parks typically provided by the county, and they've done that. And the opportunity lies in neighborhood parks, those ranging in acres of 7 to 15. And this next slide is one that paints a pretty accurate picture of park spaces around Matthews. And it just reflects exactly what we just talked through. The circles, you see this blue represents community parks, which is Purcell Halsey, Squirrel Lake, and Idlewild. And then we have our neighborhood parks where you see there's only these two, which is Rice Park and is that Windsor Park?
I think one thing that's interesting, Corey, about that graphic is, it's been said, or there's a thought that our parks aren't well distributed. This kind of goes against that. It looks like we got a pretty good distribution across the town.
We do, and it looks at type of park. So the community parks, you see it covers a wide part of Matthews. Certainly the Sportsplex, that big pink circle, serves a large part of Matthews. But looking at what it serves or the population that it really attracts, the yellow circles are the ones that we have the opportunity. It is 10 to 15 acre parks where we could certainly have a better distribution of neighborhood parks. And also you see the red, typically not measured in our inventory, but elementary school playgrounds serve as parks outside of school hours. So we certainly want to show that. It does not. The McKee Road, Purcell Halsey, call it semi-developed, two that are included that could be argued they're not really there yet.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right. So looking at Purcell Halsey Park, let me zoom out a little bit. So this property was acquired in 2005, and then in 2007, we did sign the lease with Mecklenburg County. Lease 50 years, goes through 2057 at this point, and then just renews on 12-month increments. A little bit about the park: 93 acres. I guess in the agreement, it must serve as a public park, and the town is responsible for maintenance and future development. So even with that, if anyone from Mecklenburg County is listening, when we are ready to develop this, we will approach Mecklenburg County to assist us, in developing this park. There are some active elements planned, but per the lease agreement, only 50% of the acreage can be active. The other 50% must remain undeveloped or passive. And so looking at what we've done so far, we've added a community garden over here. This was done first and actually expanded in 2019. We've added these bike and walking trails that are shown. They are on the ground. Recently added a dog park. Now you see, I'm going to talk to it in a little bit, but in this conceptual design, the dog park is back here. But looking at the park as, call it, undeveloped, in our opinion, it did not make a lot of sense to just go ahead and put the dog park back here. So we, of course, installed it, closer to the entrance.
Corey,
yes.
I'd like to bring up a frequent comment, and I know Commissioner Mayor Pro Tem McCool and I were discussing this yesterday. This park has become widely utilized, particularly by almost exclusively by bikers, quite a lot, with regards to the trails anyway. And there is a concern. I've had several constituents, particularly those that are elderly, say that they've quit walking on these trails because they fear they're going to get run over by bikes. So I'm just bringing that forward with the thought that maybe we could have some trails that are exclusively for walkers, because I was out there one time and a bike flew over my head, and it was Hazen on his bike. So but I seriously have met you over there a couple times. You've used those trails, but there's a lot of cyclists and they drive very, very fast, and it's really difficult to walk a dog or whatever, because they're like, on your right, and you like dive off the trail so you don't get run over. So I've heard that consistently. And, I love this for the first year or so when the trails were put in, nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
And there was nobody out there, but now it's very, very well utilized. Often the parking lot at the garden is full of biker people that have parked there to use the trails for that purpose. So I don't know if we can dedicate some exclusive walking trails, Commissioner Garner.
Two questions, I guess. So I guess I'm assuming that the sidewalks and paths that are paved would be walking paths and not bike paths. But also, are there not signs saying you walk in the opposite direction of cyclists?
There's signs that say that. As people visit the parks, if you
some do, some don't.
Some do and some don't.
Right.
So maybe it's the walkers that aren't going in the right direction.
Could be. I'm just passing along a comment that I've heard, and I agree. It's difficult to walk. Like I used to walk my dog on those trails pretty regularly, and it's difficult to walk through there because there's so many cyclists there coming by just so frequently. It's just hard to walk.
With you, we've heard that also, and we're going to talk about that a little bit when we get to the DeVore property. I believe it was all of us walking that one day and said maybe that's an opportunity for walking only and no bikes on that site.
Jay and I were just talking to the mountain bike group are the ones that built those trails, but there are a lot of families. I mean, there's a lot of little bitty kids, like 3 years old or 4 years old, and bicyclist comes up at 15 miles an hour or something. And even if it's the opposite way, it's kind of can be hairy. And Jay was saying in Springs, there's separate system for trails for walkers and trails for bicyclists.
Yeah,
there's enough space out there for someone.
I wouldn't want any restriction on the cyclists. They have built the trails, and people love riding their bike there, and that's great. I just think, and perhaps the DeVore property could be an opportunity just for walking, and not allow bikes there, and we could have two, or a separate, if there's any way to make a separate system here. But it's a concern that I hear with great regularity, because I have a plot at the community gardens. People come up to me and say, "Hey, Mayor, these cyclists are running me over."
Gotcha. Yeah, certainly something to consider on this site also. So the design we're looking at here was adopted in 2018. Just point out some of the amenities identified. We do have call a splash park, spray ground identified here, a nature playground, an expanded pond. Well, also next to the splash park is a recreation building. Certainly want to provide some opportunity for indoor recreation. Asphalt trails around the interior. We have an amphitheater, certainly road connection through the site, connecting Phillips and Highway 51.
Where's the amphitheater again?
Amphitheater is designed right here. And so this would be the band shell.
I think that's going to be awesome. You know, I think of the one over at South Park and how well that's utilized.
Exactly. And looking at the pond, 2 piers are shown. So an opportunity for fishing on the site. And as you see, the majority of the site does remain passive or undeveloped.
Has there ever been any consideration? I know not like a full-on, a natural history museum, but doing like a natural history piece in one of the buildings for, kids to learn or field trips to happen at?
It could. We could certainly look at, some of the indoor activities in that facility. Certainly impact the size of it when it's built. But also there's we identified a water cycle sort of outdoor classroom opportunity near the pond also. And so call it in today's dollars to build Purser Halsey Park, we're looking at roughly $6 million.
I really like this plan. Corey, we also talked about perhaps putting some sort of plaque or something out at this site that would detail the history of the site, that it was honoring Purser and Halsey, the Purser Farm, etc. So I think that would be nice.
I'm with you. And we talked about recognizing veterans on the site. These are just some examples of what we could install. Some of the larger ways to recognize, certainly, flagpole area and some plaques on the site. Here we go. All right, and also wanted to just show the difference in the types of spray grounds that we're talking about. This is the one that's in Stallings, which is, in my opinion, but what we're describing here is the active type, where it is colorful elements, big buckets dumping water, and what I see is awesome. I would be out here about maybe at least once a month. Questions or comments about Purser Halsey Park?
Just with these spray pads, what is the way to do to disinfect the water? That's always been the concern, is germs and
there's two ways to approach it. There is so like in Stallings, there is a water filtration system. It recycles the water. There are other ways where it is just simply runoff. It is just continuously pumps in, call it new water. So most of the examples that I found, it does filter the water. Think of it as a pool. It is clean to that same level as a pool. Well, the water is, but without, of course, the maintenance of the actual water. It just simply comes out and goes in the drain.
Corey, yeah, you and I have had this discussion in the past. That's a concern I have too. I was out at Stallings and witnessed a 2-year-old boy urinating while he was in there with his mother, laughing, watching him do it. So really have to have some education so that sort of thing doesn't happen. But yeah, I think it would be a nice amenity.
Yeah. And certainly the water, if that does happen, luckily it runs right into the drain through the filtration system, and it's like new water coming out.
And the other thing, yeah, that's what I would tell someone. The other thing I wanted to share with you is again, going out to this park, I've been to the dog park several times, and I think that there's great love for that dog park. A lot of people come up to me and we're very appreciative of y'all building it there, and it's being very well utilized, and just see a lot of smiling faces. So I think it's a great opportunity to this park to continue to add amenities, and it's a great addition to our park inventory.
Yes, we are very excited. All right, so now looking at Stumptown Park. Certainly, Stumptown is the central gathering space in downtown Matthews. Large events, holiday celebrations, and the food truck Fridays or concerts, that are taking place in the park. There is, call it motivation, a lot of spirit to improve Stumptown Park. Come on. And expand the civic space. So looking at the footprint today, this is the footprint of what we know as Stumptown Park. Certainly the large open lawn, public art, picnic tables, the perimeter sidewalk, of course, the amphitheater, and of course, Veterans Memorial Park is included in this discussion as part of the park. If we were to expand Stumptown Park, one idea would be to encompass the entire, well, not the entire block, but majority of the block. I will note this star, I guess more recent conversations have sort of eliminated this as a more probable inclusion to the expansion of the park. House just called it recently resold, a lot of investment into the home. Not sure if that will be included, but we can certainly discuss it without that. It is on the perimeter, that north corner, and certainly could have a nice park excluding that parcel. There is. What staff did was we did an investigation. Well, certainly looked at our existing master plan, current trends in recreation, and really just trying to figure out what successful downtown parks look like. 7 themes emerged. Again, just what successful parks look like. The one on the right, far right, that fountain is in Cary. But again, the 7 themes. One, that the successful downtown parks are people-centric. So I guess in this terms, looking at a redesigned park entrance, multiple seating areas, pedestrian access into the park, shaded spaces, sidewalk accessibility, drinking fountains, and continues to serve as the primary event location for the community, in this case, Matthews. Second theme was certainly entertainment, seasonal and regional. 3, resting and relaxation. So again, looking at the large open lawns, and certainly serving as, wedding venues. Yes, sir. We have now it's not frequent, but we have had weddings on the stage. Don't always know. I'm gonna say there have been receptions on the lawn. So a 4th theme was art and history. 5th, education and recreation. 6, whimsical amenities. This is a pretty interesting one. I believe this is in Winston-Salem. Nice little public art wall. Not sure where this is, but I think with the last tree we removed in Stumptown Park, it was like, man, let's make the stump something, interesting, but it didn't work. So we had to grind it down. But looking at the seating, so a lot of things I showed some similar things in I think it was downtown Statesville. Again, opportunities to have movable seating, some nice lighting around the park. And those are just the 7 themes that emerged as, say, typical in what a successful downtown park looks like. You guys have any questions so far? So this is one of the latest illustrations of what this expanded Stumptown Park could look like. Reorientation of the stage. Again, looking at those movable seating in this area. Shows the volleyball court here. Maybe another decision about that, but it could be pickleball. Yeah, certainly. And we've, you can sort of see the outline here. We continue to think about our food truck events. So this could be staging for the truck. So lawn, seating, enjoyment here, and you could just, you know, line up and get your food here. Certainly want to keep a playground on the space. This could be a repurpose of the existing stage, could serve as a large shelter. And you see themes still playing a role in this design, with it being open, remaining on the site. The location where that fountain we saw earlier, like this could be that. Something very impressive in Matthews. Yes.
Where's the Veterans Memorial Park in here?
So this design was done in, 2018 maybe. So this is using what we talked about in 2018. So it, not to say illustrated here, but certainly remaining a part of the new Veterans Memorial Park design will be incorporated into it. Yes. And this is a bird's eye view of that same illustration. So now that previously we were just looking at expanding the existing footprint of Stumptown Park. There is a new or different idea about expanding our downtown civic space. I'll say it was a brainchild of our planning director, Mr. Jay Camp, using what we see as the Matthews Community Center, the McDowell Art Center, and the space that is, Charlotte Mecklenburg School property, and what this certainly could look like. A lot of synergy on the site. We do have a great relationship with Mecklenburg County, or at least Matthews Elementary School. We installed connectivity to 4 Mile Creek through CMS property. So this is a community center. Well, we built this, I believe it was 2014, built a walking trail that connects to 4 Mile Creek. The McDowell Art Center worked with CMS. I believe we purchased it for $1, and we renovated the old ag building into what we know as the McDowell Art Center. There's shared parking. Back here, as you see, this is CMS property, and the community center parks there. So we do have a great relationship, but there is an opportunity, and Mr. Jay is going to talk through this opportunity.
Appreciate you letting me crash your presentation for a few minutes. Behind this, what I just have to talk really close into it, apparently. The area we're sitting right now, let's see if that's better. So Matthews Station, obviously 23 years ago, I think the only person, Charlie, you were probably the only person at this table that was around when this idea materialized for the town to purchase the old Depot Shopping Center and put in a mixed use development with the new town hall and library. But I think this is a plan that is on an equal scale, potentially, if the cards were to fall in the right place. It's an opportunity for us to think big once again. Central parks, great communities invest heavily in green space in the heart of their communities. So Purser Halsey is great. It has a purpose, but there's no replacement for green space, whether you're New York and Central Park or a small community like Matthews. Having a place that's really your living room for your community where everyone comes together. It's my belief, and I hope most people wouldn't disagree, that we've kind of outgrown Stumptown Park. It's great for what it is, but for a community of 30,000+ that serves a much larger geographic area, if you look at who comes to the park for food truck events or concerts, I bet a huge percentage don't even live in Matthews. So we're serving a much larger area than just our boundaries. And you know, having worked for the town for a long time, a lot of frustration that we haven't really been able to secure some of the parcels we need. We're sort of constrained. And I remember Mayor Taylor, I don't know, a decade ago saying, well, that's 20 years away, whether it's funding or just the inability to, acquire all these parcels and today it still feels 20 years away. We just don't control that block. So, thinking about that property, and before I move across the street, I still think the town should try to acquire parcels where we can. I know Hazen's been an advocate of this. It's still a great asset. It still may be an expanded park in the future, but it could also be something else. It could be a mixed use development one day if we were successful. Kind of flipping over to this side, and I'll talk for a moment. I think, Corey, you've got the images you can share in a few minutes. This entire block, it's over 20 acres. The school was built, I think the earliest buildings were built in 1970. From a replacement perspective, schools do get into functional obsolescence after so long, where CMS will look at major renovations or total rebuilds of schools. As Corey mentioned, we already have a lot of assets on this side. We've got trails, we've got Fountain Rock Park just down the road, just down the trail there, the community center, the McDowell Arts Center. And as I started thinking about this a few years ago, if CMS is going to rebuild this school or substantially change it, what would be the opportunities for us to partner with them potentially and do a larger central park for the community on this property? It would be a complicated endeavor, but ultimately I think it's possible that we could have a green space that I think this town would be very, very proud of in the long term. So having said that, does anybody have any kind of questions about this? I mean, that's sort of the genesis of the conversation. We talked about this a little bit at the planning conference in 2020.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I love this. I think it's awesome. I think we have definitely outgrown Stumptown Park. It's too small. And if we can't significantly expand it, this looks like a great opportunity. I'll also say that I have had discussions recently with CMS School Board Chair Elise Dashew and our representative Margaret Marshall, and told them about this possibility, and they are excited about rebuilding probably a 2-story Matthews Elementary on this site. And they had questions about how it would happen, how could they do it concurrently with kids still going to school. But people love this downtown Matthews Elementary School, and I think to rebuild it on site and make it bigger and better to accommodate more kids and have this beautiful park space all around it would be awesome. The other obviously items we would have to address is one of our commissioners lives on this site. And the Gary Smith property is on the far left bottom corner. Hazen and I talked to him relatively recently, and I think there's at least some interest on his part to not develop that as another neighborhood, but to maybe sell it to the town for use as a park. So I love this. I think this could be incredible. We could if we could move Stumptown Park someday across the street and, expand its footprint by a couple multiples in size, that would be incredible. So I'm fully supportive of this. And I think, Jay, you're, genius to suggest it. And I think it's incredible idea. I think it would be the next big thing for the town, and it would really improve our downtown park space. So I love it. I hope we can make this happen. This is a really, really cool idea.
I'm glad you brought up the school and the height. CMS is doing 2- and 3-story schools now. I think it's maybe K or K and 1 have to be on the first floor. There's some rule, but the upper grades can be on the upper levels. They've done new schools as little as 10 acres. And that was when it was not a shared use site. But also, I think as we work with CMS, thinking about capacity is important. I think the current enrollment, Renee, you may be more on top of this than me. It's 1,000 or 1,100, may drop a little bit with yeah, I know. But what's the proper capacity for the size? Maybe the new school is built to accommodate 700. Maybe there's a relief school somewhere. So I think just thinking about traffic numbers in downtown, we've always had issues with pickup and drop off because the school was never designed for 1,000 students. That, quite frankly, that's in my opinion too big for an elementary school.
Well, what they do love though about this is as opposed to going and purchasing land and building a new school, they are very, very excited about perhaps expanding or doing whatever, doing this on site because they don't have to buy the land. And they recognize, I made the comment, I think everybody knows I grew up in Ohio till I was 12 years old. And I went to this elementary school that I thought was ancient when I was a kid. I said, man, this school must have been here for 100 years. And it was like 10 years old. And they recently bulldozed it because it was like 50 years or, it reached 50 or 55 years. And schools really wear out. And I was talking to Margaret Marshall about this, but having 1,100 kids walk up, and do whatever kids do to a school for 50 years, they wear out, and plus technology is old. Matthews Elementary is in relatively poor shape. It has leaking windows, leaking roofs. It needs to be renovated or rebuilt. Commissioner Tufano?
Yeah, I was just asking, what is the recreation space required for a school, a K through 12, and how much would that consume? Because I'm assuming during school days, for safety reasons, they wouldn't allow the public in that area. So where, if you could use your pointer, what amount of acreage or square foot of recreational space per student, or what is the requirement?
I'll share. So we did attempt to say drop a footprint of a school onto this aerial. We weren't comfortable, showing it, just given that level of whatever. It was very rough. But I believe it was the design that we were working with the landscape architect. They showed it in this lower southwestern quadrant. What was it? 6 acres, 7 acres, call it. Short answer is it's going to really depend on the design. I'm not sure if there's like a minimum of recreation space.
There's not a physical requirement per student or anything like that. Does anybody have any knowledge of that?
Well, I think Jay just said, 10 acres perhaps.
That's one of the smallest new school sites. I mean, they use the bus parking for recreation during the day, and then they've got 1 or 2 dedicated playgrounds. This, baseball diamonds seem to be unusual in new CMS builds. I think that is one feature that's a little bit different here.
So we're actually talking about a 13-acre park.
No.
There's opportunities, and I wish we'd had the time to get a conceptual plan together, but there's opportunities for shared usage of parking, circulation. So some of the drop-off circulation for kids during the day could also be places for people to park for events after hours. So I wouldn't look at it as just bifurcating it and it's just CMS here and just park there. I think there would be safety concerns that CMS has, that yes, you can't go onto the playground during school hours. So they may have their own dedicated playgrounds, but just think about, paved areas in particular for parking and circulation could be shared.
I think it's a great idea, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic to have this downtown. As we approach and get closer to finalizing or coming close to negotiation, it would be great to see what it would possibly look like.
And I'm just throwing this out, just pulling numbers out of the air, but I would estimate that 80% of the use by population is going to occur at a food truck event after school hours or on the weekends. I mean, most people work when the kids are in school, so there's not going to be a ton of people requiring the space during school hours, and the kids are out of school right now at what, 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then most of the activity we see in our current parks happens, from 3 o'clock to dusk and on the weekend. So, yeah, I think I think this would be incredible with a long range plan, but a lot of pieces have to fall together, and but what an opportunity we have to really, what I'm excited about is greatly expanding the footprint of Stumptown Park because it's just too small right now. Commissioner Garner?
It's 802. That's the hopeful capacity. I don't know what the current is, but when, let's see, I would say, I haven't updated this since 2018, but in 2018, it was at 1,017. But then there's a new school opening this summer that would pull students out of there.
So Mayor, what I'd like to say is, well, I'm assuming everybody, this excites everybody. Is that a fair assumption? Yeah. I do think because these things take time, and you can see the heavy lift is sorting it out with, in my mind, sorting it out with CMS. How much money are we talking about? Where are they going to get it? They got whatever, 200, I don't know. They got a ton of schools around the county. But it seems like when we get the opportunity to acquire property, because I think there's 3 parcels that eventually need to be acquired, we probably need to have, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah,
And it
I mean, I
seems like
think
acquisition of property is the first place to start.
I think we need to start with that Gary Smith piece, and we probably need to be talking to him really soon.
It's not cheap though.
No,
Nothing's
he's not,
cheap.
well, he's a businessman, and he's going to want a fair price for it. But right now, that is zoned for what was it? 11. He had changed it. I think he had dropped it now to a.
Yeah.
He's changed it to 11 or 9 or something less. But my continuing, nightmare is that I'm going to drive by someday and there's going to be bulldozers on the site, and that's going to be sprouting up out of the ground, because it is zoned and approved right now to build 9 or 11 houses on this site. Actually, it is zoned for 13, but he said he's not going to build that many if he does do it. But he does have an interest in selling it. I think we need to strike while the iron's hot. It's not going to get any cheaper if we wait. So Hazen, maybe as a parting gift as you leave the town, you could donate, $1 million or so we could get this. That'd be great.
So I think moving forward, we put together a few images kind of similar to where we shared the streetscape images of some other communities. And I've shared a few of these with you in the past. This is a community in the Atlanta suburbs. This is Duluth, Georgia. I think smaller than Matthews. That's actually their town hall, their city hall. They also have, their festival center. So it's sort of a rec building, but they also built a combined stage into that. So they do special events, and then it's kind of hard to tell, but in the lower right, they actually fronted a mixed use residential building onto the park. So you've got cafes directly facing out onto the green space. So this is just a great example of a community doing downtown revitalization. They've got a train track coming through town. They've got 1- and 2-story buildings. So it's very similar to Matthews and from a built environment perspective. But this won an award. There's a group called the Project for Public Spaces, I think it is. And this was an award-winning project about 10 or 15 years ago. Public places or spaces, I get that right. This is another community in the Atlanta suburbs, and you'll find as you talk to me that we use, Hazen will talk about benchmarks for what communities are doing in North Carolina. We look to Wake County and their suburban towns. In the suburbs of Atlanta, a lot of communities are fighting some of the same challenges we are. It's about community identity. They're either crossroads that didn't have a traditional downtown and they have to start from scratch, or they're struggling to find their place in a metro area of 5 or 6 million people, and they want to do placemaking and say, this is our community. So this is Suwanee, Georgia. As far as I can tell, they didn't have a traditional downtown. So this is a ground up town center, but they chose to build, gosh, I want to say that's a 15 or 20 acre park at one of their major intersections. It's surrounded by, mixed use development, and that's their city hall right at the center. But it has a lot of the elements Corey talked about earlier. There's a spray ground. They've got a big amphitheater with terrace seating on the right, and some other monumentation and artwork within the park. That's just a kind of a close up of the spray ground. So I don't know, Corey, which category that falls into. That's more decorative. You said there were like 3 levels.
Just for sheer entertainment value, I like the ones where the water unexpectedly comes up out of the ground. So you watch the kids jump that's pretty funny.
A little closer to home, and I didn't have a site plan, so this is just a snapshot from Google. If you've been to Kannapolis, they have a great park called Village Park that they've been slowly expanding over the years. They've got as you can see on the left, a branch of the YMCA. To the right, just off screen is downtown Kannapolis. That's kind of the far back side. That's their city hall in part, and they're doing some amazing revitalization work. If you ever want to take a road trip one weekend, you really should go up and see the work that Kannapolis is doing. But the Village Park has a train that runs through it. They've got a double-decker carousel. So if you think about traditional small town and opportunities to do placemaking, and the next slide's got some close-ups of it just to kind of. Oh, are they still the Intimidators? Cannonballers now. Okay. But these are some images. I think one link I found, one of their concerts drew 10,000 people, I think. I mean, so that the amount of people they can accommodate with this band shell and stadium. But these are just some shots of the train and the carousel that are at Kannapolis Village Park.
I can make a comment about a carousel. There's a carousel in Raleigh near North Carolina State University that's like 100-year-old carousel.
Pullen Park.
At Pullen Park, and it is jam packed with kids, all the time. It's one of the biggest, draws. Yeah, it's neat. So if anybody knows where we can find a nice carousel for.
So I think Hazen sent this in a weekly update, maybe last year at one point, but you may be aware Cary is doing probably one of the most ambitious parks in the entire state. I don't know where they get their money. It's a $50 million park. That's if you know Romere Bearden Park in downtown Charlotte, that was a $10 million park that the county did. So this park is going to cost 5 times that, but it's a 7-acre park. And if you put away the money they're spending on it and think more of the layout and the planning work, it's in the heart of their downtown, and it has constraints, right? There are existing buildings. There are a few existing houses on the road frontage there on the left. They've got a new mixed-use building on the lower right, but they have been able to weave a 7-acre space that is going to be really the centerpiece of their community and probably a destination in the whole Triangle region. And there on the left, you've got sort of a summary of some of the items that they're putting in with walking trails. They've got bridges over the lake and some other amenities. But I felt that there were a lot of similarities just from a site constraint perspective that were similar to Matthews. And I think the next slide's got, see what other images we have. Yeah, so this is a 3D model, that image I found that kind of shows some of the plans. You can see that they're working around existing structures. I think that looks like that's maybe a parking deck on the right. You can see what the roof looks like. So that may be providing parking for the new development that's on the site, as well as visitors to the park. And there's some existing residences. There's maybe historic homes, and it looks like an inn on the lower left. But you can kind of see, going back to Corey's image, and I think that's a first phase, that fountain you shared. That's that fountain in the lower right. So they've already built some of this, and then it's going to flow back into the center of the park.
Renee?
To give some perspective, it looks like this is a $50 million park that was part of a $112 million bond.
Yeah. So we're not,
for perspective.
And this may be setting
people in Cary. Let me tell you, I don't know what the per capita income is there, but it's a lot more than it is here.
So that may be setting some kind of statewide record on cost per acre to develop a park. So again, the similarities here are more the location, the size of the park, and how they're weaving it into that block. And I think it's the last slide I gave you, Cary. These are just some imagery of some of the sort of whimsical. I personally think I would be on those slides. That it does look fun, but
I see people taking their dogs down the slides at the school playground, so you can expect some dogs on there too.
But happy to hear the support for the concept, and staff will keep having those conversations with the county.
It makes me think, a couple years ago, Jay, we used to take more regular road trips to different communities. And a couple of years ago, Jay suggested, let's go down to Rock Hill. And I do remember giving an internal Jersey eye roll, like, why are we going to Rock Hill? But I didn't say it out loud. But those that went, Rock Hill has got it going on. And there's nothing like seeing it in action. I mean, even these pictures are fun to look at, but I do think, and it does feel like this board's got some real vision for y'all to think about road trips that the public may wonder, why are you doing that? But really, there's nothing like kicking the tires on things. And I think as y'all come with ideas, I think to go on road trips is a really healthy way to learn about what's going on and our competitors, really.
I can make a comment. I would like to see our board during this term make some substantial or substantive steps to making this a reality. I mean, we talked about this in 2020. I think we talked about it in 2018. I mean, you know, let's try to start acquiring property and start having more meetings with CMS and see if we can make this a reality, because I think it really is the next big opportunity for the town.
Yeah. So thinking about why not? Why would this idea not work? CMS pretty much holds the cards, right? It's certainly finding that partnership with CMS to bring this vision, make it work. And again, looking at what we're trying to accomplish, expanding the civic space, essentially expanding what we know is downtown. If there's a destination, something that draws people further down Trade toward the park, we've expanded our footprint of what we know is or think of as downtown. Any more comments about town parks?
I have a quick comment. Commissioner Tufano is a property owner, right? And you seem enthusiastic about this idea. We've already talked to Gary Smith. The people that own the property on the other side is like Southern Investments. They're out of Taylorsville, North Carolina, which I do know where that is. I don't know if anybody else in this room knows where that is. Have you ever talked to that ownership group that's on the other side of you at your house?
There's been renters in there ever since I got there in 2012. So I haven't spoken to the actual owners.
All right. McKee Road in Pleasant Plains. Of course, there's no name for the site, but I think consensus is that it will be a park, right? It's going to be a park. Okay. All right. So
Corey, are the people that were going to put shredded medical garments, are they doing that on this site?
Yes.
Are they doing it?
No, they last I talked to them, they're still working with the state on getting permitting in order to compost. There was a special permit that they would have to have.
Okay, so I haven't noticed any activity up there, so I was just curious.
Town did acquire this property in 2019. Well, we accepted the property run. They also $1 million. And of course, that $1 million was not, say, directly, I guess not earmarked directly for this site, but it is earmarked for park development. The site is 28 acres, many natural features. There's a pond, some wild grasses, and there's some wetland around the pond, but then also these are some high tension power lines. So thinking about what this site could look like, again, looking at, well, thoughts are, to enhance the natural areas. Like I said, there's a pond, some awesome grasses on the site. This is an opportunity for active recreation. Many of our parks are surrounded completely by neighborhoods, and this is one that is cornered by McKee Road and Pleasant Plains. Now, there are homes on the, call it northern edge of it, but I think they are removed enough. Again, the power lines separate them. A lot of the complaints or comments we get is that, I think I heard a few yesterday, tennis is loud. Of course, the lights, loud basketball, loud pickleball players. That was a joke, but this is a site where, it is, say, removed or surrounded by roads where we could have active recreation. Looking back at our, what we have as our Matthews standard, we are certainly missing outdoor basketball courts. That's something that we do not have any of. Actually, going back to our master plan, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but we do need to update our master plan. Like I said, it was adopted in 2006. I would step out on a limb and say people that were here in 2006 either may not still be here in 2022, and there's maybe a totally new opinion about some things and the way we measure success for parks and recreation in Matthews. So it is, I think it's worth our while to update our master plan, redo the master plan, and pickleball is not even a measure, and we know everybody loves pickleball.
If I can make a comment, you and I were talking, Corey, yesterday, how I regularly, probably once a week, drive up to Huntersville to their outdoor basketball courts. They also have tennis. And I mean, you'd be there till 10 o'clock at night and in there is packed. People love it. And I think it's something that's sorely missed here in Matthews. I have people ask me all the time, where's the basketball courts? You have to either go to the Y or you can go to Cruise Road, but it's not nearly as accessible as having an outdoor court. So I'd be a huge, huge proponent for this.
Yes. Yeah, nothing like outdoor.
Have a bunch of people playing basketball.
Yeah.
And late at night, as long as it's daylight. We didn't put no lights specifically because they'll stay there all night as long as we had light. So we just let them to dusk, to dawn, you know, they can play after the daycare closes.
Yeah, so this site could offer that opportunity for, you know, those outdoor active activities. Another amenity that could be on the site is an all abilities playground. Something we've identified as one of those improvements to make in parks, something that we certainly want to offer. Many of our playgrounds have accessible components to it, but the idea here is to have this signature playground equipment that is 100% accessible and is enticing to anyone with, well, people of all abilities. Interactive play. So this is sort of looking at some of the trends in recreation, a lot of electronic components, working a lot with your sensory, well, your senses, a lot of touch, sound. There's some innovative activities that could be installed on this site. The next slide has a few other ones. Come on. Oh, actually, we'll get to it in a second. But also fitness areas. Mayor, you got that email from the fitness challenge. You know, we've worked with them before or had conversations with them. You know, certainly, and looking over the past 2 years, outdoor fitness is something that everyone is, well, many people have a desire for.
Is that something you have an interest in? I mean, I thought it looked really cool that like that area, like the middle bottom, they have those special like.
And so where that program gives Matthews an advantage is, say we have this project plan and we say, look, we're going to have a fitness area. We have a budget for it. They would just simply come in and it would be essentially be a $30,000 grant to install it. Say where it's limited is where we don't really have a project and we just come in, attempt to just create something to install that. Say the percentage or I guess impact of that grant is less if we're just creating a project.
Can we share that presentation or maybe have you share it with the board?
I can.
So they know what I'm talking about. So this, maybe you would talk a little bit about it because you know the name, I don't even recall the name of it, but it had multiple fitness stations and it looked really cool. I mean, it looked like something that would really fit in with Matthews.
Yeah, so it's called Fitness Challenge USA or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And we, you know, we've had conversations with them, and essentially what they do is they have their product. It is outdoor fitness. It's a circuit that's installed. I want to say it's concrete, and then the actual exercise equipment is. I don't think there's an example of it on these slides, but it reminds me of this. Like it is, of course, all steel type. You know, that's maybe some example of it there, but.
Yeah, and I remember when I read through it and looked at the little video, it says that you use your body weight for resistance. So it's all like, you know, different types of push-ups and things like that person's doing in the top right there. I think that would probably kill me. I would probably just be split in half if I did that.
And so it is using, you know, their equipment and it is a grant. What they estimated I guess the cost roughly 125,000, I think it was, and of that, they would grant the organization 30,000. So I mean that leaves us a delta of call it roughly 90,000. And again, that's where it's maybe not of as much of an advantage. I guess as if we already had a project, we're just simply deducting our bottom line or reducing our total cost. But yeah, and I guess the program this year, they're working with BOC not
I said that because I didn't know how to say his name.
Yeah,
the artist, yeah.
his foundation, and they install or replicate some of his artwork on the tops and the sides and rears of the facility.
We were going through our agenda really quickly today, and we've moved lunch to 11:30. So Corey, if at the end of your presentation, which I think is coming up pretty soon, if we can Google maybe the video that was.
Yeah, I've got that email. I can pull it up.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, so certainly fitness is an opportunity on the site. Sport courts. I guess what I was a little excited about was of course I attend different conferences and we talk to different playground vendors, and I'll tell you what, this is I guess maybe not so much here, but of course the vendors tell me it's popular in Europe. But kids can come and create their own music. So
Chief P could spit some verses.
Yeah. Chief P can come make his demo right here. Just another opportunity for kids to be creative and different ways to play soccer. So like this example is a sport court. It has I believe it's 5 sides. So you think of it as soccer, but it's not really. It's some interpolation of soccer. The kids can play their own games out there. The demos were awesome, by the way, but it's a opportunity on the site. Again, looking at playgrounds, this site offers a space using some of the barn themes. Looking at that property, but people either was a part of or close to the Fincher farm, so we could have a farm theme along with just again nature play, adventure play. And these are some of the conceptual designs for the site. Some of the amenities, many of the ones that we listed, open space here, basketball, and the inclusive playground. I believe there's a dog park shown here, the courts in this orientation. Of course, maintaining a pond, a pier, boardwalk, and then some landscape here. And all this is in your packet. Then concept B moves things around. I do think this is, call it my favorite. I do think the inclusive playground, could be the anchor on the site. Typically the one we would like to select would be very large in scale and very impressive as people are coming in from Union County, coming from the direction of Charlotte or from Brace YMCA, and this, anchor this park site. And just another reorienting some of the amenities on the site. So you can tell we've looked at this for a while. Ignore the number at the bottom. That's and actually that's from 2018, so it's a little different now, likely. But I did include it just to show you, say, the magnitude of the cost, what we're looking at. So those examples we showed roughly call it $3.5 million to 4. And I believe it was you, Mayor, back whatever year it was, I believe it was 18, looking at what Windsor Run donated to the town. It's like, well, okay, well, what could a $1 million park look like? And that's what this represents, essentially an open space here. I mean, many of the amenities we talked about, a pier, sport court, picnic shelter on the site, inclusive playground. But this is just one example of what a $1 million project could look like, on this site.
The amenities include a place to throw rocks into the pond.
we would make
not a whole lot else.
Yeah. So those are thoughts for Pleasant Plains and McKee. Any other questions or comments? All right.
Said you recently spoke to Tim Fincher. You want to mention that conversation?
I really appreciate you bringing me that up. So we're working with Tim. There's a sidewalk gap in front of the old family home place. And Tim's kind of sensitive to the fact that the sidewalk's going to be close to the house. And just for y'all, FYI, behind the house is a fence, a barn that was built by German POW prisoners. Kind of an interesting fact. But so Tim's working with us, and we're working with Charlie to finish up the easement agreement. But Tim's, if you know him, is a very nice guy, but he said it sure would be nice to honor the family with the name of that park, Fincher Farm Park. And I told him about Purser Halsey and how that is a natural. I can't think of a better name, but obviously I can't commit to it. So to him. So I just want to mention that to this group, that does sound like the appropriate name at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I just like to say that I think that honors the people that have lived in Matthews for many years. I mean, rather than us naming, I've used the kind of a joke. You've heard me say I grew up near Park Road Park, which is like the worst name ever for a park. But I mean, I don't know what else we would name it. Why wouldn't you name it and honor somebody that lived on this land for 100 years? I think it's a good idea. I'm glad we're naming other parks in the name of the family that own the property.
Awesome. All right. So now this is the most recent acquisition, or one of the most recent acquisitions of the town. 3221 Chipwood Lane, also known as the DeVore property. So now currently on the site, you can see the ponds in the aerial. There's 2 ponds on the site, some dense pine on the site. I believe this is the home. There's a pretty interesting barn, right here on the site. And of course you see the open fields. Again, a lot of opportunity on this site. I believe one of the goals of this purchase, one was to, preserve open space in Matthews. Looking around Polaris, there's not another one singular piece of property that looks like this remaining in Matthews. So looking at what some opportunities are, well, certainly public input would come into play, but just simply some staff ideas. Call it 2 categories of opportunities on the site. Self-led, that being what you think of as your picnicking, walking, and I even noted no bikes, potentially on the site, through the woods, some fishing, bird watching, and an outdoor obstacle course, which you'll see here some examples of in a second. But then also the instructor-led programs we could certainly offer, some outdoor exercise classes, water education, and if we were to build a facility on the site, certainly offer some indoor programming also. So just some, I guess, street view images of the site. The one on the left is near the pine trees looking back toward the house. The one on the right is close to, I think it's Michaelin Street, just looking at the stand of pine trees. And this is closer to the home, looking across the pond toward the pine trees. That is pretty. That's the money shot. Right?
Corey, what is your philosophy about offering areas where you can grill out in our parks? Do we still do that?
We do. Typically, we keep them near the picnic shelters.
So yeah, there's one at Squirrel Lake.
Yes.
I think this would be a great opportunity here. Just have some benches and some places people could go cook hamburgers or something, on the weekend, walk around. I think have it maybe a bathroom and keep it really, really simple. But yeah, I recall as a child going to parks like that and just really enjoying. Just go throw a frisbee, cook some hamburgers, chill out. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. What this site offers, as far as the natural amenities, looking at these small areas where you just gather. This is one of the examples of an obstacle course, something that could be created in the woods. Certainly with the ponds, I think it'd be awesome to have a pier, be able to fish from. and this is, I'm going to say this is purchased playground equipment, not just a bunch of sticks. These kids, put together. Yeah, that's 200 grand for that. So yeah, just examples of the, stick with the theme, I guess, pulling from the natural amenities on the site and enhancing those. Also think there's an opportunity looking at how beautiful that site is. I guess focus on this view. So that's at Colonel Beatty Park. Something that serving as a wedding venue, I think would be an awesome opportunity on this site. I wanted to install some picnic shelters. Be awesome to have them, maybe with a fireplace in it. I'm not sure if there's any in any parks around here, but or maybe our risk management wouldn't allow that. But again, I do think there's an opportunity to add an indoor facility. It doesn't have to be huge. Again, thinking about Beatty Park, that's one where you could get married here and have your nice reception here. These are examples of smaller picnic shelters, like you just mentioned. Just small groups coming out, frying some or grilling some burgers or hot dogs, and just enjoying being outdoors.
Quick question. What's the plan for the house on site? Is that going to be turned into Corey's new office, or is it going to turn into, what are we doing with that?
Yeah,
we put former town managers.
I'll say we haven't done a lot of investigation about what we could use the house for. Thinking about, indoor recreation. Now I have not been in the house, so I'm not sure exactly what it looked like indoors, but in my mind, I'm picturing 9-foot ceilings, a lot of walls. So it may not be the best opportunity for programming. Maybe it is storage. I guess that's the decision, we can make. Yeah, we'd have to evaluate it.
Does anyone know how big the house is?
It's like 2,000 square feet, something like that.
The house. I mean, it's like a 1970s style, but it's a pretty house. And
yeah, I think when we were on site, one of the things I suggested as a possibility is something like the Nature Museum at Freedom Park, which I have great memories as a child going to that place and seeing turtles and bees and all the cool stuff they had inside.
I mean, certainly could be some opportunities, some renovation to the house to create, those type of experiences. But yeah, we certainly investigated. All right, well, let me back up a little bit. So are there any other comments or questions about, I'll just say the DeVore property?
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you considered Frisbee golf on any of these properties? I mean, and I say that because Squirrel Lake has a half a Frisbee golf course, right? And I know that its popularity is gaining, especially recently. There were tournaments at Squirrel Lake Park, right? And it was pretty incredible to see the number of people that came to Matthews to participate in that, and exciting, I think.
Yeah, certainly looking at, disc golf, Frisbee golf, typically is played, in the woods, and there's an awesome stand. It'd be, balancing that, what maybe have in mind with just having dedicated walking trails, because people walk along the disc golf trails too in Squirrel Lake Park. And it is, it's like, watch out for Frisbees.
Yeah, I think I was one of the people that were that vocally said I was against expanding the one at Squirrel Lake Park because for that reason, because I heard some feedback from folks that, hey, I don't want to be walking through the woods and get hit in the head by a Frisbee. So actually, but I mean, I'm okay to look at it. I'm not saying
I think that there's an equal population that's eager to see opportunities to play.
Yeah, I agree. It's very popular. My son has played there many times. So
okay, there we go. A short answer is yes. All right, so now we have this site here on Keziah. Keziah and Sam Newell. And we're talking about this property right here. It's roughly 4 acres. Yes, 4.2 acres, acquired through dedication by the Tennyson LLC, which is developing the site across the street. Jumping back onto the disc golf question real quick. So, the town also accepted this property here. I believe it's roughly 7 acres. We did look a little closer at disc golf on that site, just as a way to quickly activate it. So
Yeah, I think it would be really difficult on the divorce site because the trees were planted to be harvested and they're in, straight rows. It'd be very difficult, I would think, to play golf, to do golf in there, but this might be a better site.
Yeah, it could be, certainly we do our due diligence and see what works best. But yeah, this site is one that we talked a little bit more about and adding to our inventory of disc golf opportunities. And also share in Squirrel Lake, we're going to talk about it in the budget, but adding 6 baskets to the existing 12, essentially shortening some of the holes. So make it a true 18 without truly adding 6 different whatevers.
I think one of the opportunities with that is creating a course of the caliber that tournaments can come to town. And I am not a player, but my husband is dedicated and gives all of his extra time to it, and there are world champions that live in Charlotte and come play in courses around town and out in Monroe. And so why not take the opportunity to bring people like that to Matthews and show off our natural resources?
And if you did not know, Charlotte is like nationally known for disc golf, if you didn't know. So I was in a conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and one of the vendors, of course, didn't know me. It's like, yeah, I come to Charlotte and we come and play disc golf. Charlotte, disc golf is serious in Charlotte. So looking at the site here on Keziah, again, roughly 4 acres. So now, if I could pull up Polaris, you'll see that a good portion of the site is within the floodplain. I believe it comes roughly about half of the site, a little more than half, is within the floodplain. You see Urbans Creek Greenway, the project is underway. We have planned for an access and from this site onto the Greenway, roughly, you can follow my cursor there. That's going to roughly be the access onto the Greenway. Again, this is another site where it does present that opportunity for active recreation. Again, let me back up. It's near Crown Point Elementary School, not completely surrounded by homes. There is a home right here, but staff's idea is to have the active recreation closer to the road. Of course, some screening, but this site again does offer that opportunity for active recreation, outdoor courts, certainly some parking. I don't think the houses have been demolished yet, but this should be done pretty soon. But again, we're gonna
hire the Exxon contractor.
We're not hire that group. So yeah, so these are call it the park projects you're gonna hear the most about in the next coming conversations. I'm certainly excited about it. My favorite thing to do is park projects and trails. But that's it. Do you guys have any questions, comments?
Corey, I've been a really loud and continual proponent for, expanding our park inventory. And I wondered if you have any concerns about us, if you being able to maintain everything, if we, continue to add new park space without hiring more employees.
Yeah, I'm Public Works' biggest cheerleader. Certainly with, they maintain all the parks.
Right.
Call it, there's a level of concern, knowing that every time we add something, we continue to add something. You add a task to someone's plate.
I guess we need to keep that in mind as we do this. Renee?
That Keziah Park that you just showed, I think is a great location for the sort of CrossFit style outdoor facility, because it's so far away from the YMCA, and it kind of fills a role there. And also I like the idea of a free rigorous workout for people. And as we talk about affordable housing, we also have to talk about healthy lifestyles and ways we can help provide that through amenities that we provide anyway. I think that would be a great location for that and provide a service to a part of town that we don't generally kind of showcase.
Awesome. Thank you.
First, Corey, I want to thank you for this presentation. I feel very energized about parks. I mean, this has been a great presentation. I see so many amazing opportunities. I know we keep talking about what's the next big thing. I see many next big things in this list. So I'm great work on that. Again, I think we have some we have some big projects. I'm super energized about this. This was great.
Awesome. All right.
Corey, can you possibly pull that short video up?
Give me 1 second.
It's what? It's less than 5 minutes, isn't it?
You know, talking about maintenance of park, the DeVore property, and that is going to fall on the responsibility of Parks, Public Works.
Well, I think
To that.
and I think something that we also need to consider is maybe we don't want to mow every single field. You know, let it be a natural meadow with rabbits and let the animals take over and just put some trails through them, and they don't need to be maintained. But I don't think we need to mow every inch of every park. You know, let some of it be natural.
Can I ask a question on that note?
Sure.
How is
I have ask him that question.
how long has it been since implementation? Maybe at some point we could just do an update for the board and a board meeting and not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Corey has pulled this up. It's 3 minutes long. But I thought this was pretty cool. Take a look. Get the sound to work. Maybe put a mic up to the. This would be free area with you know, using your own body weight to get in shape. Even, you know, college mascots enjoy working out.
Does it come with a college mascot? Like, do we get a Matthews Morador or something? Is it, could we switch it up? Like, could it be transformed to a sloth or something?
The Matthews sloth. How about the slug? The Matthews slug.
We're just getting started.
On the branding of Brakeman, slow down. You know, slow down, enjoy Matthews, the Matthews sloth.
So you guys kind of get a flavor for this. It's a small pad that we could install at some location. I just like it. Doesn't require a lot of extra equipment. There's the mascots using it. So the opportunity is we could get a grant to install one of these, but Corey says it'll cost $120,000 to $150,000. But I think this would be, it looks really like it would hold up well outdoors. Yeah, it's
Maybe some, you know, sort of high-end estimation.
Yeah, you know, maybe it is just their estimate, but in the presentation, that was the, you know, roughly the commitment from the town would be 90 to 95,000. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that impressed me is, and I did some independent Googling on this, is when you see these installed across the country, they are very well utilized. See a lot of people using them in different towns. And I think I've shared with some of you that at Park Road Park back in the 70s, the Perrier Water Company came in and put a multiple station. It was like a golf, like 18 stations. At this station, you do 10 push-ups, then you run to the next station and do a pull-up or whatever, and you can go through it. It was pretty neat. I think it ultimately fell into disrepair and they tore it out. This stuff looks pretty sturdy. Yeah, but there's not a lot to it. It's pretty simple. There's all the locations they have them.
Yeah, and just honestly, just trying to coordinate calendars. My meeting with them is Monday, I think at 12.
Oh, great.
We're going to just talk through it.
Great,
Little
fantastic. I
more
appreciate you doing
detail.
that. I don't know. I think this could be a neat component of one of our parks, is all I'm saying.
I think this is a great opportunity to partner with a private investor, so to speak. And
Well, the other cool thing on this opportunity is that wall in the back on this one is going to have the art of the gentleman, I can't pronounce, Basquiat or whatever.
Basquiat.
Yeah, that what she said.
Yeah, and that's the new wrinkle in this program is the art component.
Yeah, they're
and I really want to get some more detail about what that entails. Because yeah, we could. This
must
is
work
public
because
art.
all these guys and gals are really ripped. Look, I mean, they're tearing it up.
Yeah, they're already at their goal. Yeah, so I'll share some more information when after I meet with the group, and we'll see what we can come up with.
All right, thank you, Corey. That was an excellent presentation. We're going to break for lunch here in a few minutes, and I wanted to share some thoughts before we wrap up. Briefly, I for whatever reason have been blessed with at certain times in my life with an incredible memory. I can remember vividly the color of dress my mother wore as she brought my birthday cake to me on my 4th birthday. I can remember all the words to the song my sister sang in her 7th grade chorus because she sang it at home every day for 2 months, and it's burned into my brain. I can remember swimming in a pond in Ohio and looking up through the water and seeing my friends swim above me with the sunlight coming down through the willow tree above us, just like it was yesterday. So for whatever reason, I can remember these things. I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I can remember some other things in my life. And I want to talk about a few memories I have with the elected officials that are here. And I'll just go around the table. So Renee and I first became acquainted when a super street was proposed to be built through our town. And, we can debate whether or not we need 2 lanes or 4 lanes, but this was a super street with bulb outs big enough for tractor trailers to turn around in that would come right down through our historic district. And I was very much against it. And I met Renee and I knew she was a soldier on my side, and we became very well acquainted. And I remember going to your house, Renee, and meeting all your incredible friends and just being impressed by your energy. And I'd also like to say that while Renee was mayor pro tem, we spoke probably multiple times daily, almost 7 days a week. And you were a great resource and a great, gave me great advice. And Renee really is a great researcher, does a lot of that hard work. And like I say about our staff here in Matthews, I will lump Renee into the group that I say she made me look a lot smarter than I really am, because she would feed me a lot of good information. So thank you for that. Oh, wow. I didn't expect that. I'm doing compliments and I get burned, man. Holy cow. John Urban, I met many years ago. Both of us had an interest in the appearance and tree board, and I ended up, I think, taking kind of his place when he got elected, maybe previous to that, but we worked on the tree ordinance together. One memory I want to share about with John, and John, you may not remember this, but John and I were both the newbies running for town council in 2009. And I didn't get elected. John did. I came in 7th place out of 7 people. And I got a lot of ribbing at work over at Combraco. Like, geez, you came in 7th place out of 7. You're such a loser. I'm like, oh, thanks. So I was really kind of depressed. Jeff Miller kept suggesting that I run again. And in 2011, I think most people know, maybe some don't, but I don't talk about it too much. But I was diagnosed with cancer, and I had prostate cancer, and I was very sick, and I didn't run in 2011. And I believe it was in 2012 at Matthews Alive. I wasn't feeling well, and I sat down in front of Renfro's and had got separated from my family. And I just was sitting there, and John, you and Terry came up, and you were walking up, and you stopped and said, "How you doing? And how you feeling?" And that meant a lot to me. And I don't even know if you remember that, but it was very uplifting at the time. So thank you. Mark Tofano. Can't really say anything good about Mark, so we'll move on to Gina. No, I'm just kidding. I first met Mark because I was concerned about the Gary Smith property, and I wanted to turn that property into a park. Not Mark Tofano, as has been widely reported. So I went and knocked on his door one day and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this property next door." And we became friends. And Mark is a tactician and a soldier, and very well organized. And I am convinced, as I've said publicly before, that we would not have a Matthews Veterans Memorial Park if it weren't for Mark. So thank you for that, Mark. Gina, I remember as the somewhat angry woman that sat in the back of the room filming me, trying to find, a mistake that I was making. So I kind of perceived it. I was like, wow, who is this lady that's always filming us and calling out, all this stuff. But I realized that you had a great concern for the town, and that you wanted us to be transparent and not misuse money or do things that were incorrect. And I appreciated that. But what I really wanted to share is when I ran for mayor in 2019, I did some campaigning with Gina and her husband, Ken, and I realized that you're really funny. This lady's a comedian. I mean, she had me cracking up, and I just saw a different side of Gina Hoover. And I think you're a great person. You have a great concern for the town. And I appreciate you a whole lot. Ken McCool. Also in 2019, when I was running for mayor, I was showing up at different places, and I kept seeing this Alex P. Keaton looking character that had a suit and tie on, while all of his friends, were skateboarding with t-shirts and playing basketball. This guy's in a 3-piece suit, and he usually showed up with a buddy that had a 3-piece suit. And it was like, why are the men in black, following me around? And who are these guys? So finally I met him, and we talked, and I realized that Ken has a lot of the same values and interests that I did, that I have. We agree on a lot of stuff, and he says he's an old soul, and I think I was an old soul when I was his age as well. So comes with a youthful perspective, a lot of energy, a lot of ambition. I fully expect that Ken will be mayor or in Congress or president or something someday. So I think there's great future for you. You got involved in politics a lot earlier than the rest of us. I think I had gray hair when I actually ran for the first time. And Larry Whitley, I met you the first time at the Americana. He said, "What do you look like?" I said, "I'm a really tall guy with white hair." And he picked me out pretty quickly. And we sat down, and we broke bread, and we talked, and we became friends very quickly. Larry's taught me quite a bit. Invited me to his church. He said, "In my church, we hold hands at the end of the service. So I want you to hold hands." And there was a rather large, kind of angry looking black man to my right. And I held his hand, and I'm like, boy, this is really awkward. And Congressman Dan Bishop was on my left, and I held his hand, and we sang songs. And at the end of the songs, Larry said, "Now turn to the person to your right and to your left and tell them you love them." So I turned to the angry looking fellow to my right. And I said, I love you. And he smiled and he said, I love you too. So, wow, that felt pretty good. And then I looked at Dan Bishop and I said, I don't know if I can do this. But I told Dan I loved him and he told me he loved me too. So, I mean, Larry, I've learned a lot in our relationship. I think you've truly taught us to look at things from a different perspective. And I think we can all grow and learn and having all this diversity in our group. So what I want to say is I think I have shared important personal times with each of you, and I respect and I love each of you. And I'd like to think that going forward on this term, that I can kind of be like the hub of a bicycle wheel connected to all you guys with spokes, and that we can work together and do great things for the town of Matthews. That's what I hope for. That's why we got elected, to work well together. I don't want to devolve into petty arguments. I don't think we will. I think we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us. And I hope we can work together and make that happen, because I really do love and appreciate each of you. And the other person I want to talk about is that fellow over in the corner there, Mr. Blodgett. We've had some great times. Hazen and I have talked. I don't know what he's going to do when he doesn't talk to me every hour. He's going to get lonely. We had talked earlier. I have made it fairly well known that I may run for one more term as mayor, maybe not, but probably no more than that. And I had hoped that Hazen and I would ride off into the sunset together. But for whatever reason, Hazen has decided now is his time to leave. And I just want to know how much we all appreciate you. You've done a fantastic job. And don't think that I won't call you pretty regularly for advice. So you're a wealth of knowledge, and we're really going to miss you. Wish you all the best in your retirement. I'm sure we'll still see you around. So thanks. And I also want to just all the staff that's in this room. You guys are such consummate professionals, and I appreciate each of you so very much. And again, you make it easy to be an elected official here. You take a lot of the heat off of us and provide us a lot of good information, and it's much appreciated. So thank you. Renee, did you want to say something? Thank you.
First, I think we need to ask Hazen what his hourly rate is so we can work that into our expense accounts. But also, I think you have given us a lot to work with, Mayor. And it's a little bit unfair for you to go around the room and tell each of us, what our experiences are. And we need to give a little bit of that back. And over the past 2 years, I think I can say this for you and Hazen both. You have both taught me great things about what it means to be a leader, not just a commissioner. And the amount that I feel like I internally have grown over the past 2 years has been an incredible gift for me. Whether I run again or not, is something that has been transformational in my life. And I owe you both a great deal of gratitude for that.
Thank you. Now I would like to ask, again, if Chief P could sing us out. Can you feel the love tonight, or something like that? So yeah, I think I'm going to have to, revert back to Chief Pennington, but it was fun for a couple days here to tease. But anybody have anything they'd like to say before we break for lunch, whenever it comes? Anybody else have anything for the good of the group?
Which isn't here yet, right? So that's what I would like to say is it is. And John, tone, right? And you're a team player, right? We've seen, to be blunt, we've seen other players. I've seen really get their votes or whatever it is and move on. And I think you've worked very hard towards consensus and listening to everybody. And it's been weird with the remoteness and all that, but credit goes to your leadership style, and it is easier to rally around when we're on the same team as opposed to, well, am I the cool kids or am I not the cool kids, right? And so that's credit to you. I do think what's exciting about this board is, and I will say, planning conferences about and stuff, and then when the rubber meets the road, the boards have tended to revert back. But I do definitely get a different feel that this group is ready to do a significant bond for the community. And I think we're kind of at an important crossroads in our town that we're not growing. We're not, you know, we're just heard that from y'all, and I think from that's still interested in doing great things. And I know I can other department heads, we're here to be on your team. Lead us, and we are on your team.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
And from the angry lady, she still has every one of those recordings.
Uh-oh, Mr. Urban.
I don't want to get into long-winded speeches, but I've worked the longest, I guess, with Hazen. You're really going to be missed, no doubt about that. The running joke was on my phone, I had Town Hall Annex because Hazen and I would call all the time, and rightfully so, the town was sort of bereft of that certain knowledge, and he would call and ask me questions about things. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the fact that you guys felt well enough about me to ask me those questions, and I really appreciated the 12 years that we've been together, plus it was years before that as advisory board, parents and tree board. I would say though, in this planning conference as a whole, it was a good experience, but I felt, and I told Renee this, I agree with her again, that it was more diving into the weeds. And I was hoping that maybe in the fall, we've done this in the past, is another type of planning conference, a mini planning conference that circles back and talks about the vision, because I think now that's where we need to be going. Normally the planning conferences are up here, and we have been reacting because of COVID, budget crunches, inflation, and so we've been down here. So that would be my technical sort of suggestion, is to sort of regroup in maybe October to sort of set direction, realizing that, yeah, you're going to be turning around and a year later running for office, but I think the board needs to do that. We really haven't had the big idea. We really haven't been talking about vision, because in the last few years, it's about just sort of keeping your head above water. That's the bottom line.
Totally agree. And I think this term for me, I've joked with some of my friends. I said, you know, how do you like being mayor? I said, I feel like I was the virtual mayor, because I think all of us got robbed of so many, you know, live and in person, Matthews Alive experiences, and a lot of the outdoor concerts and things like that we didn't get to participate in. So hopefully we're all sitting here without our masks on. Hopefully a, you know, Omicron version XYZ doesn't come and bite us, but I hope that we can have a more intimate relationship with our constituents, where we can, you know, be present in person. It's going to be a lot better. I think I've been sitting behind a computer screen for way too long, ready to go out and, you know, meet folks again. Right, exactly. I felt like I was kind of thinking, you know, some of our meetings, I just wanted to videotape. My son's like a technical genius, so I'm like, hey, how about just videotape a loop of me for about 30 seconds where I just sit here and move a little bit, and I'll go watch TV or something. But no, it's going to be good. I think we have better. It's harder to understand people, I think, when you're just hearing voices and flat screens. You don't understand if someone's making a joke or being sarcastic or what their true intent is. I think it's better to be in person, be back in this room. I think this planning conference really flew by too. It went by really quickly. Even yesterday was a very long day, and I was pretty exhausted by the end of it, but it went by pretty quickly. I like the idea of a mini planning conference. We've done that in the past. Maybe we can have a special guest of Hazen to come back and can work the easel. Yeah. Probably can't afford him. We do, we've talked about this. I think we have, Larry, you and I talked particularly just the other day. I think we have the most diverse board we've ever had as far as, age, the age demographic, on a lot of different fronts. We have a very diverse group, and we're looking more and more like our constituents. I think we got, good representation. Anybody on staff want to say anything? Anybody have any constructive criticism for the board? What you like, don't like? Corey says, don't quit dumping more parks on me. No, I know. I see your enthusiasm for parks. Yeah, CJ would be the one to do that. Doug Rose, what do you got to say, man? You're our only visitor, so for the whole conference. Yeah, standing room only. We appreciate you, Doug. That's it's great. Our volunteers are the backbone of our community, and they provide so much information to us. We really appreciate it. Go team. Okay, let's all, like at the end of Mary Tyler Moore, can we all come in for a group hug? Scrum. Yeah, let's have an agile scrum meeting. All right. Thank you for attending. Lunch will be here. Where's lunch from, by the way? Stacks? I thought Life may have gone out to, slaughter a cow or something, because it's been gone for quite some time. So. So we're having pancakes here for lunch in just a minute. Just kidding.